If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. This is the Idaho Students Murders Case Series. Episode 7, Deciphering the Case. We will be doing a deep dive on Kohberger, the affidavits released thus far, and plenty more information, some of it never discussed in the mainstream media before, attempting to decipher all of the oddities of this highly unusual and obviously very tragic and bizarre and senseless crime, and some of the motivations behind it, as well as other details on whether or not there are other perpetrators, what the police know, what led to the arrest, various new videos released surrounding the case and different possibilities, timeline clarifications, and Kohberger's behavior. Is he really behaving like some criminal mastermind, or is he a sloppy goof who didn't care if he was caught or not? I mean, the evidence seems to be pointing in multiple directions at the same time, which is what makes this such an unusual case. As always, if you find the MINDSHOCK podcast interesting and informative, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Help support the channel. Help us get more mind-shocking content out there with logic and reason at the forefront, which is quickly becoming extinct in our modern world. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way with access to exclusive streams and chats. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you're still not getting notifications, just make sure you comment a whole bunch more on all the videos, because that's how the YouTube algorithms work. Like and share, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. All right, so I've been waiting a little bit for the dust to settle since the release of the affidavit, and plenty more information here. So we are going to go over everything, of course, in typical MINDSHOCK fashion, leaving no stone unturned, no theory unexamined, because we attempt not to fall for logical fallacies here. So, looking at the affidavit here, number of weeks ago now, in January 2023, Exhibit A, statement of Brett Payne. The below information is provided by Brett Payne, who is a duly appointed, qualified, and acting peace officer with the county of Latah, state of Idaho. Brett Payne is employed by Moscow Police Department in the official capacity of position of corporal and has been trained and qualified peace officer for approximately 4 years. Corporal Payne is being assisted by members of the Idaho State Police and agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. On November 13th, 2022, at approximately 4 p.m., Moscow Police Department Sergeant Blaker and I responded to 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, hereafter the King Road residence, to assist with scene security and processing of a crime scene associated with 4 homicides. Upon our arrival, the Idaho State Police forensics team was on scene and was preparing to begin processing the scene. MPD Officer Smith, one of the initial responding officers to the incident, advised he would walk me through the scene. Officer Smith and I entered the King Road residence through the bottom floor on the north side of the building. Officer Smith and I then walked upstairs to the second floor. Officer Smith directed me down the hallway to the west bedroom on the second floor, which I later learned, through Xana's driver's license and other personal belongings found in the room, was Xana Kernodle's, hereafter Kernodle room. Just before this room, there was a bathroom door on the south wall of the hallway. As I approached the room, I could see a body later identified as Kernodle's laying on the floor. Kernodle was deceased with wounds which appeared to have been caused by an edged weapon. Also in the room was a male, later identified as Ethan Chapin, hereafter Chapin. Chapin was also deceased with wounds later determined, autopsy report provided by Spokane County Medical Examiner, redacted, dated December 15, 2022, to be caused by sharp force injuries. I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee Gonzalez's, hereafter Gonzalez's room. I later learned from a review of Officer Nunez's body camera there was a dog in the room when Moscow police officers initially responded. So the dog was in the bedroom on the west side of the floor. Okay. The dog belonged to Gonzalez and her ex-boyfriend, Jack Duzcore. I found out from my interview with Jack on November 13, 2022, that he and Gonzalez shared the dog. Officer Smith then pointed out a small bathroom on the east side of the third floor. This bathroom shared a wall with Madison Mogen's, hereafter Mogen bedroom, which was situated on the southeast corner of the third floor. As I entered this bedroom, I could see two females in a single bed in the room. Both Gonzalez and Mogen were deceased with visible stab wounds. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogen's right side when viewed from the door. The sheath was later processed and had a K-bar, USMC, and the United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. The Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA left on the button snap of the knife sheath. As part of the investigation, numerous interviews were conducted by Moscow Police Department officers, Idaho State Police detectives, and FBI agents. Two of the interviews included BF and DM. Both BF and DM were inside the King Road residence at the time of the homicides and were roommates to the victim's BF's bedroom located on the east side of the first floor of the King Road residence. Based on numerous interviews conducted by MPD officers, ISP detectives, and FBI agents, as well as my review of evidence, I have learned the following. On the evening of November 12, 2022, Chapin and Kernodle are seen by BF at the Sigma Chi House on the University of Idaho campus at 735 Nez Perce Drive from approximately 9 p.m. November 12th to 1:45 a.m. on November 13th. BF also estimated that at approximately 1:45 a.m., Chapin and Kernodle returned to the King Road residence. BF also stated that Chapin did not live in the King Road residence, but was a guest of Kernodle. Gonzalez and Mogen were at a local bar, the Corner Club, at 202 North Main Street in Moscow. Gonzalez and Mogen can be seen on video footage provided by the Corner Club between 10 p.m. on November 12th and 1:30 a.m. on November 13th. At approximately 1:30 a.m., Gonzalez and Mogen can be seen on video at a local food vendor called The Grub Truck at 318 South Main Street in downtown Moscow. The Grub Truck live streams video from their food truck on the streaming platform Twitch, which is available for public viewing on their website. This video was captured by law enforcement. A private party, redacted, reported that he provided a ride to Gonzalez and Mogen at approximately 1:56 a.m. from downtown Moscow in front of the Grub Truck to the King Road residence. DM and BF both made statements during interviews that indicated the occupants of the King Road residence were home by 2 a.m. and asleep or at least in their rooms by approximately 4 a.m. Very important distinction there. This is with the exception of Kernodle, who received a DoorDash order at the residence at approximately 4 a.m. Law enforcement identified the DoorDash delivery driver who reported this information. Now, just when you think there's not enough bizarreness in this case, especially the timeline, so there's a DoorDash delivery at 4 a.m. So this is a curiosity. So then the murders could not have occurred before 4 a.m., theoretically. Again, let's verify some of this information. DM stated that she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. Now, again, going back to the early stages, the rumors were that one of the roommates was on the second floor. And, of course, the coincidence there is the authority-worshipping cultists, they immediately jumped on anybody who didn't believe that both other roommates happened to be on the bottom floor, the converted garage, and that's why they didn't hear anything. It's always interesting to go back to the early stage of the case just to examine. I mean, there's even some so-called true crime aficionados who were having meltdowns over anybody suggesting that the two surviving roommates were on the second or third floor at any time, and that they must have been in the garage and they must have not heard anything. I mean, just this goofery that permeates all of these true crime cases. It's important to point it out so that people can learn from it and avoid future errors in this kind of nonsensical goofery and just hallucinating to know something for sure. The motto here on MindShock is, of course, the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. If you weren't there, how would you know? And yet some of these goofs, they just do not seem to learn case to case from making these assumptions. So let's continue here. DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom on the southeast side of the second floor. DM stated she was awoken at approximately 4 a.m. by what she stated sounded like Gonzalez playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms, which was located on the third floor. So she's basically saying you could clearly hear everything on the third floor from the second floor. A short time later, DM said she heard who she thought was Gonzalez say something to the effect of, quote, "There's someone here," end quote. I mean, that's very disturbing. A review of records obtained from a forensic download of Kernodle's phone showed that this could also have been Kernodle as her cellular phone indicated she was likely awake and using the TikTok app at approximately 4:12 a.m. So either Kernodle or someone using her phone was on the phone at 4:12 a.m. DM stated she looked out of her bedroom but did not see anything when she heard the comment about someone being in the house. DM stated she opened her door a second time when she heard what she thought was crying coming from Kernodle's room. DM then she heard a male voice say something to the effect of, quote, "It's okay, I'm going to help you," end quote. And we'll get into what that could mean later, but of course, very, very disturbing as well. At approximately 4:17 a.m., a security camera located at 1112 King Road, a residence immediately to the northwest of 1122 King Road, picked up distorted audio of what sounded like voices or a whimper, followed by a loud thud. A dog can also be heard barking numerous times starting at 4:17 a.m. The security camera is less than 50 feet from the west wall of Kernodle's bedroom. So this does make it seem less insane, because suppose, like, this is such a, again, popular party house, but the density of houses in that area is kind of crazy. So now we have evidence from this affidavit that apparently a security camera did pick up audio. DM stated she opened her door for the third time after she heard the crying and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered the person's mouth and nose walking towards her. So there's, of course, a lot of speculation onto whether or not Kohberger saw her or not. Some people allege he actually did not see her and simply walked out and she saw him. But she's stating he's walking directly towards her and she opened the door. Now, we can presume at this point there's no noise, right? There's no sounds being made. Would a door opening, again, you'd have to perform the test in that particular house with that particular door. But would a door opening make noise in a silent house? DM described the figure as 5'10" or taller. Male, not very muscular, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. Now, Kohberger does have kind of bushy eyebrows, and he is 6 feet tall. So she stated the figure was 5'10" or taller. That seems to match up thus far. Not very muscular. Also kind of adds up, but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. The male walked past DM as she stood in a frozen shock phase. Now, we don't know exactly how close he walked by, but this is kind of weird, isn't it? Unless he really didn't see her, or he's in some kind of fugue state or whatever. The male walked towards the backsliding glass door. DM locked herself in her room after seeing the male. DM did not state that she recognized the male. This leads investigators to believe that the murderer left the scene. The combination of DM's statements to law enforcement, reviews of forensic downloads of records from BF and DM's phone, and a video of a suspect video as described below leads investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. A video of a suspect video? What does that mean? The security camera caught him from the other houses? Now, early on, there were rumors that there was a video of a guy wearing a mask. It did not specify what kind of mask, so it does seem to add up here. Because, again, yeah, early on, I mean, it's very strange for there to be no evidence, no video, nothing heard by anybody, nothing seen by anybody. So now, obviously, this affidavit makes it more clear that that was not the case. It is more reasonable, so to speak. It kind of matches a little bit more with reality on how this crime could have occurred. So the investigators to believe the homicides occurred between 4 and 4:25 a.m. That's a very specific time. So now it's narrowed down to 25 minutes instead of somewhere around 4 hours like early on. During the processing of the crime scene, investigators found a latent shoe print. This was located during the second processing of the crime scene by the ISP forensics teams. So it was not located during the first processing. Interesting. By first using a presumptive blood test and then amino-black, a protein stain that detects the presence of cellular material. The detected shoe print showed a diamond-shaped pattern similar to the pattern of a Vans-type shoe sole, just outside the door of DM's bedroom, located on the second floor. This is consistent with DM's statement regarding the suspect's path of travel. So this is just outside the door? So he basically strolled right past her? Or did she open the door such a crack, Yeah, it doesn't state. Did she open the door only such a small crack that he couldn't notice that it was open if the lights inside were off and the lights in the hallway were off? As part of the investigation, an extensive search, commonly referred to in law enforcement as a video canvass, was conducted in the area of the King Road residence. This video canvass was to obtain any footage from the early hours of November 13th, 2022 in the area of the King Road residence and surrounding neighborhoods in an effort to locate the suspect or suspects or suspect vehicle or vehicles traveling to or leaving from the King Road residence. This video canvass resulted in the collection of numerous surveillance videos in the area from both residential and business addresses. I have reviewed numerous videos that were collected and have had conversations with other MPD officers, ISP detectives, and FBI agents that are similarly reviewing footage that was obtained. A review of camera footage indicated that a white sedan, hereafter suspect vehicle 1, was observed traveling westbound in the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow at approximately 3:26 a.m. and westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway 95 in Moscow at approximately 3:28 a.m. On this video, it appears suspect vehicle 1 was not displaying a front license plate. A review of footage from multiple videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of suspect vehicle 1 starting at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. These sightings show suspect vehicle 1 makes an initial 3 passes by 1122 King Road residents and then leaves via Walenta Drive. 3:29, 3 passes? Huh. Based off of my experience as a patrol officer, this is a residential neighborhood with a very limited number of vehicles that travel in the area during the early morning hours. Upon review of the video, there are only a few cars that enter and exit this area during this time frame. Suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m. Okay, so he drove by 3 times and then again a 4th time? It can be, or at least the vehicle or a similar vehicle. So can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Quinn Road number 52, then driving back westbound on King Road. When suspect vehicle 1 is in front of the King Road residence, it appears to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Quinn Road and King Road, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Quinn Road. Okay, this is kind of weird. So you would think this guy's been in the area multiple times. He makes an unsuccessful attempt to either park or turn around in the road. Or is he changing his mind and then unchanging his mind about what he's going to do? Suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of the King Road residence at approximately 4:20 a.m. at a high rate of speed. Suspect vehicle 1 is next observed traveling southbound on Walenta Drive. Based on my knowledge of the area and review of camera footage in the neighborhood that does not show suspect vehicle 1 during that time frame, I believe that suspect vehicle 1 likely exited the neighborhood at Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive. Palouse River Drive is at the southern edge of Moscow and proceeds into Whitman County, Washington. Eventually, the road leads to Pullman, Washington. Pullman, Washington is approximately 10 miles from Moscow, Idaho. Both Pullman and Moscow are small college towns, and people commonly travel back and forth between them. Law enforcement officers provided video footage of suspect vehicle 1 to forensic examiners with the Federal Bureau of Investigation that regularly utilize surveillance footage to identify the year, make, and model of an unknown vehicle that is observed by one or more cameras during the commission of a criminal offense. The forensic examiner had approximately 35 years law enforcement experience with 12 years at the FBI. His specific training includes identifying unique characteristics of vehicles, and he uses a database that gives visual clues of vehicles across states to identify differences between vehicles. After reviewing the numerous observations of suspect vehicle 1, the forensic examiner initially believed that suspect vehicle 1 was a 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Upon further review, he indicated it could also be a 2011 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. As a result, investigators have been reviewing information on persons in possession of a vehicle that is a 2011 to 2016 white Hyundai Elantra. Investigators were given access to video footage on the Washington State University campus located in Pullman, Washington. A review of that video indicated that at approximately 2:44 a.m. on November 13th, 2022, a white sedan, which was consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as suspect vehicle 1, was observed on WSU surveillance cameras traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at Northeast Stadium Way. At approximately 2:53 a.m., a white sedan, which is consistent with the description of the white Elantra known as suspect vehicle 1, was observed traveling southeast on Nevada Street in Pullman, Washington towards SR 270. SR 270 connects Pullman, Washington to Moscow, Idaho. This camera footage from Pullman, Washington was provided to the same FBI forensic examiner. The forensic examiner identified the vehicle observed in Pullman, Washington as being a 2014 to 2016 Hyundai Elantra. At approximately 5:25 a.m., A white sedan, which was consistent with the description of suspect vehicle 1, was observed on 5 cameras in Pullman, Washington, and on WSU campus cameras. The first camera that recorded the white sedan was located at 1300 Johnson Road in Pullman. The white sedan was observed traveling northbound on Johnson Road. Johnson Road leads directly back to West Palouse River Drive in Moscow, which intersects with Conestoga Drive. The white sedan was then observed turning north on Bishop Boulevard and northwest on SR 270. At approximately 5:27 a.m., the white Elantra was observed on cameras traveling northbound on Stadium Way at Nevada Street, Stadium Way at Grimes Way, Stadium Drive at Wilson Road, and Stadium Way at Cougar Way. On November 25th, 2022, MPD asked area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Hyundai Elantras in the area. On November 29th, 2022, at approximately 12:28 a.m., Washington State University police officer Daniel Tiango queried white Elantras registered at WSU. As a result of that query, he located a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate. The vehicle was registered to BRYAN KOHBERGER, hereafter Kohberger, residing at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment 201, Pullman, Washington. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is approximately 3/4 of a mile from the intersection of Stadium Way and Cougar Way, last camera location that picked up the white Elantra. The same day at approximately 12:58 a.m., WSU Officer Curtis Whitman was looking for white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra at 1630 Northeast Valley Road in Pullman in the parking lot. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses WSU students. Officer Whitman also ran the car and it returned to Kohberger with a Washington tag. I reviewed Kohberger's Washington State driver license information and photograph. The license indicates that Kohberger is a white male, 6 foot, 185 pounds. Additionally, the photograph of Kohberger shows that he has bushy eyebrows. Kohberger's physical description is consistent with the description of the male DM saw inside the King Road residence on November 13th. Further investigation, including a review of Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke's body cam and reports, showed that on August 21st, 2022, BRYAN KOHBERGER was detained as part of a traffic stop that occurred in Moscow, Idaho, by Corporal Duke. At the time, Kohberger, who was a sole occupant, was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate, which was set to expire November 30th, 2022. During the stop, which was recorded via law enforcement body camera, Kohberger provided his phone number as redacted, hereafter the 8458 phone, as his cellular telephone number. Investigators conducted electronics database queries and learned that the 8458 phone is a number issued by AT&T. On November 14th, 2022, BRYAN KOHBERGER was detained as part of a traffic stop by a WSU police officer. Upon review of that body cam and report of the stop, Kohberger was the sole occupant and was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plate. On November 18th, 2022, according to Washington State licensing, Kohberger registered a 2015 white Elantra with Washington and later received Washington plate. So this is November 18th. Prior to this time, the 2015 white Elantra was registered in Pennsylvania, which does not require a front license plate to be displayed. This was learned through communications with a Pennsylvania officer who's currently certified in the state of Pennsylvania. Based on my own experience in communication with Washington state law enforcement, I know that Idaho and Washington require front and back plates to be displayed. Investigators believe that Kohberger is still driving the 2015 white Elantra because this vehicle was captured on December 13th, 2022 by a license plate reader in Loma, Colorado. He's in Loma, Colorado, December 13th? Kohberger's Elantra was then queried on December 15th in Hancock County, Indiana. On December 16th at approximately 2:26 p.m., surveillance video showed Kohberger's Elantra in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Okay, so he's driving back. The sole occupant of the vehicle was a white male whose description was consistent with Kohberger. Kohberger has his family in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, learned through a TLO search and locate tool database query. Based on information provided on the WSU website, Kohberger is currently a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University. Pursuant to records provided by a member of the interview panel for Pullman Police Department, we learned that Kohberger's past education included undergraduate degrees in psychology and cloud-based forensics. These records also showed Kohberger wrote an essay when he applied for the internship with the Pullman Police Department in the fall of 2022. Kohberger wrote in his essay he had interest in assisting rural law enforcement agencies with how to better collect and analyze technological data in public safety operations. Kohberger also posted a Reddit survey which can be found by an open source internet search. The survey asked for participants to provide information to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decision making when committing a crime. Okay. So it doesn't give a date here on when he applied for an internship, but it was in the fall of 2022. So was he still planning to commit the murder, and was he planning to be a police officer investigating the murder he committed to make sure it didn't get solved? And another curiosity here that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So cloud-based forensics and collect and analyze technological data. So you would think he would know all about cell phone pings, traffic cameras, all of these things. So how could he be so sloppy? That's the question on many people's minds. Some people believe he's some kind of accomplice, and there's multiple people involved. Other people believe he's being used as some kind of patsy in some kind of ring. But we'll examine those later. Or he's just a straight psycho, and even though he did study all this stuff, he just didn't care and wanted to commit these crimes. I mean, that's a possibility as well. As part of this investigation, law enforcement obtained search warrants to determine cellular devices that utilize cellular towers in close proximity to the King Road residence on November 13, 2022, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. After determining that Kohberger was associated to both the 2015 white Elantra and the 8458 phone, investigators reviewed these search warrant returns. A query of the phone in these returns did not show the 8458 phone utilizing cellular tower resources in close proximity to the King Road residence between 3 and 5 a.m. So, does that mean he left his phone at home, or is this not him? Based on my training experience and conversations with law enforcement officers that specialize in the utilization of cellular telephone records as part of investigations, individuals can either leave their cellular telephone at different location before committing a crime, or turn their cellular telephone off prior to going to a location to commit a crime. This is done by subjects in an effort to avoid alerting law enforcement that a cellular device associated with them was in a particular area where a crime is committed. I also know that on numerous occasions, subjects will surveil an area where they intend to commit a crime prior to the date of the crime. Depending on the circumstances, this could be done a few days before or several months prior to the commission of a crime. During these types of surveillance, it is possible that an individual would not leave their cellular telephone in a separate location or turn it off, since they do not plan to commit the offense on that particular day. On December 23, 2022, I applied for and was granted a search warrant for historical phone records between November 12, 2022 at 12 a.m. and November 14th at 12 a.m. for the 8458 phone held by the phone provider AT&T, approximately 24 hours preceding and following the times of the homicides. On December 23, 2022, pursuant to the search warrant, I received records for the 8458 phone from AT&T. These records indicated that the 8458 phone is subscribed to BRYAN KOHBERGER at the address in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, and the account has been open since June 23, 2022. These records also included historical cell site location information, CSLI, for the 8458 phone. After receiving this information, I consulted with an FBI special agent that is a certified member of the Cellular Analysis Survey Team. Members of the CAST are certified with the FBI to provide expert testimony in the field of historical CSLI and are required to pass extensive training that includes both written and practical examinations prior to be certified with CAST, as well as the completion of yearly certification requirements. Additionally, the FBI CAST SA that I consulted with has over 15 years of federal law enforcement experience, which includes 6 years with the FBI. From information provided by CAST, I was able to determine estimated locations for the 8458 phone from November 12th, 2022 to November 13th, 2022, the time period authorized by the court. On November 13th, approximately 2:42 a.m., the phone was utilizing cellular resources that provided coverage to the 1630 Northeast Valley Road, apartment G201, Pullman, Washington, hereafter the Kohberger residence. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage southeast of the Kohberger residence, consistent with the phone leaving the Kohberger residence and traveling south through Pullman, Washington. This is consistent with the movement of the white Elantra. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the phone stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in the area without cellular coverage, the connection to the network is disabled, such as putting the phone in airplane mode, or that the phone is turned off. The phone does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m., at which time it utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to the Idaho State Highway 95 south of Moscow, Idaho, near Blaine, Idaho, north of Genesee. Between 4:50 and 5:26 a.m., the phone utilized the cellular resources that are consistent with the 8458 phone traveling south on Idaho State Highway 95 to Genesee, Idaho, then traveling west towards Uniontown, Idaho, then north back into Pullman, Washington. At approximately 5:30 a.m., the 8458 phone is utilizing resources that provide coverage to Pullman, Washington, and consistent with the phone traveling back to the Kohberger residence. The 8458 phone's movements are consistent with the movements of the white Elantra that is observed traveling north on Stadium Drive at approximately 5:27 a.m. Based on a review of the 8458 phone's estimated locations and travel, the phone's travel is consistent with that of the white Elantra. Further review indicated that the phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th that are consistent with the phone leaving the area of the Kohberger residence at approximately 9 a.m. and traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, the phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to the King Road residents between 9:12 a.m. and 9:21 a.m. The phone next utilized cellular resources that are consistent with the phone traveling back to the area of the Kohberger residence and arriving at the area approximately 9:32 a.m. So apparently, according to this, his phone traveled back to the scene of the crime. So apparently, again, if this is him and if this is guilty or whoever's using the vehicle and phone, they wanted to see what was going on the morning of, which is weird. Some people actually theorized that he went into the house again and left the door open. Now, that is obviously just speculation, but apparently there is some evidence to suggest that he did return to the scene. Investigators found that the phone did connect to a cell tower that provided service to Moscow on November 14th. But investigators do not believe the phone was in Moscow on that date. The phone has not connected to any towers that provide service to Moscow since that date. Based on my training experience and the facts of the investigation thus far, I believe that Kohberger, the user of the phone, was likely the driver of the white Elantra that is observed departing Pullman, Washington, and that this vehicle is likely suspect vehicle 1. Additionally, the route of travel of the phone during the early hours of November 13th and the lack of the phone reporting to AT&T between 2:47 a.m. and 4:48 a.m. is consistent with Kohberger attempting to conceal his information during the quadruple homicide that occurred at the King Road residence. On December 23rd, I was granted a search warrant for Kohberger's historical CSLI from June 23rd, 2022 to current, prospective location information, and a pen register trap and trace on the phone to aid in efforts to determine if Kohberger stalked any of the victims in the case prior to the offense, conducted surveillance on the King Road residence, was in contact with any of the victims' associates before or after the alleged offense, any locations that may contain evidence of the murders that occurred on November 13th, the location of the white Elantra registered to Kohberger, as well as the location of Kohberger. On December 23rd, pursuant to that search warrant, I received historical records for the phone from AT&T from the time the account was opened in June 2022. After consulting with CAST, I was able to determine estimated locations for the phone from June 2022 to present, the time period authorized by the court. The records for the phone shown that the phone, utilizing cellular resources that provided coverage of the area of the King Road residence on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13th. All of these occasions, except for one, occurred in the late evening and early morning hours of their respective days. So yeah, this does not look good for Kohberger from the outset. I mean, this is relatively damning information. Is it beyond a reasonable doubt? No, of course it is not. What about combined with the DNA on the sheath? Again, I don't know if we could call that with beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, because he was that dumb to leave his sheath. Did he leave it on purpose, or did someone else leave his sheath with his DNA on it? Now, let's go more into MindShock land. Did someone who knew he did it and thought he might not have left evidence gone back and planted his sheath with his DNA on it because they knew that he committed the murders and they wanted to make sure the cops would nail him? Is that a possibility? Or is it the accomplice doing that and the accomplice is also guilty, but they want to frame Kohberger? Or, of course, we have some other scenario that we didn't go over yet, but we will go over plenty more. Okay, so one of these occasions, August 21st, the phone utilized cellular resources providing coverage to the King Road residence from approximately 10:34 p.m. to 11:35 p.m. At approximately 11:37 p.m., Kohberger was stopped by Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke, as mentioned above. The phone was utilizing cellular resources consistent with the location of the traffic stop during this time, Farm Road and Pullman Highway. Further analysis of this, so he was actually stopped on his way back from one of these surveillances. Further analysis of the cellular data provided showed that the phone utilized cellular resources November 13th, consistent with the phone traveling from Pullman, Washington, to Lewiston, Idaho via U.S. Highway 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., the phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand located 810 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef's store located at 820 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington, and adjacent to Kate's Cup of Joe showed a white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle 1 drive past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cellular data from the phone. At approximately 12:46 p.m., the phone then utilized cellular data in the area of the Albertsons grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage obtained from the Albertsons showed Kohberger exit the white Elantra consistent with the suspect vehicle 1 at approximately 12:49 p.m. Interior surveillance cameras showed Kohberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04 p.m. Kohberger's possible path of travel is depicted below. Okay. Analysis of records for the phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., the phone utilized cellular resources that provided coverage to Johnson, Idaho. The phone then stops reporting to the network from approximately 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with the phone being in the area and that the phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from Kohberger family residence located in Albertsville. This is another curiosity. Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Albert's Son's Grocery. I mean, not exact, but just another one of these weird coincidences out of all the different stores in all the different cities. The evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28, 2022, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash and the DNA profile obtained from the sheath identified a male as not being excluded as the biological father of suspect profile. At least 99.9998% of the male population would be expected to be excluded from the possibility of being the suspect's biological father. Now, again, there is problem with a lot of this DNA evidence. If you haven't checked out the DNA for Dummies podcast in the Stephen Avery series, this is based on an extrapolation, which may or may not be accurate. That's why a lot of these wrongful convictions and people getting exonerated, with the previous DNA tech, they were also a 99.9999% match or whatever. And then the new generation DNA testing revealed that that was actually bunk. Now, are we to expect that the current testing is also accurate and that this 99.9998% percentage is actually accurate? See, it's extrapolated data, so they take X amount, thousands of people, whatever it was. I go over to the DNA Dummies for podcast. It's actually alarming. They take hundreds or a few thousand people, and then they extrapolate that data to hundreds of millions. So that's dangerous to do. Not that that's not accurate. It could be accurate, but we don't know for sure. But that's still damning either way, because that means it could also be him. And in combination with the other evidence. That's why you need more than one piece of evidence. When you have the DNA and you have other pieces of evidence, you can add it up. If you only had the DNA, if this is a faulty extrapolation, then the DNA on its own, I know a lot of people think it's totally damning, but it's not, because not only is the technology not 100% accurate, but also it could have been planted. Based on the above information, I am requesting an arrest warrant to be issued for Bryan C. Kohberger for burglary at 1122 King Street in Moscow, Idaho, and 4 counts of murder in the first degree for the murders of Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Anna Coronado, and Ethan Chapin. I declare under penalty of perjury pursuant to the law of the state of Idaho that the following is correct and true. Okay, so that is the affidavit that has been released. Quite a lot of information gleaned there. I mean, obviously way more questions, but certain things have been answered, including the location of one of the roommates also being on the second floor and actually seeing an individual. And then also the reported security camera footage from a neighbor also being verified in this affidavit. So a lot of these early rumors, so to speak, were accurate. Once again, that's why you don't just outright dismiss them. You don't believe them, but you don't outright dismiss them. I don't know why the Dunning-Kruger crowd has such a huge problem with understanding this basic. It's not that you believe the rumors. You simply do not rule them out because you don't know if they're true or not. Some of them end up being true, some of them not. Just like in any case. They're not all 100% true. They're not all 100% false usually. So in the layout here, we're looking at a more accurate layout of the house than prior. Did he really start on the 3rd floor? So there is noise. The dog is barking. There's something going on in Kaylee and Maddie's room. And further clarification, I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous episode, supposedly one of them may or may not have been in bed. The other, he didn't necessarily bust in there, and they were both in bed, and he killed them. One of them might have not even been in bed, or neither were in bed. And then when he killed one, the other either came in or was already in the room, and he wasn't expecting that. So we really don't know the exact situation of what happened there, obviously. And then, so there's noise. Xana Kernodle heard something. She said someone's in the house, according to the roommate. Then there's noise or something picked up on the security camera, and then there's this creepy male voice saying, "I'm going to help you." Is that Kohberger? Some people theorize that could have been Chapin. But if Chapin was already dead at the time, and then was Chapin's body moved after the fact? And how many of the bodies were moved after the fact? And by whom? I mean, other questions too. This DoorDash order. I mean, it's so close to the time of the murders. Like, yeah, this is truly a very, very unique case. I mean, there's a lot that still doesn't make sense here, of course. Now, this PhD student of criminology, is he just that dumb that he left all this evidence? There's something doesn't seem to add up here. Or he's just completely insane. He doesn't care about the evidence. So, some people also theorize the second time the phone was turned off between 5:36 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. near Johnson, Idaho, there's actually a huge reservoir there. Some are speculating that he tossed the knife in the reservoir. Now, the return to the area is also a curiosity because did he realize he left the sheath there and he wanted to go get it? Or was he simply trying to see what was going on? Now, also new information that has come out, apparently Kaylee had been calling Jack around 2 a.m. to 40 a.m. The final call, 2:52 a.m. So apparently if this is not during the time of the murders, and the murders are after 4 a.m., then this is possibly not related to the murders in any way, which is, of course, one of the possibilities discussed. Apparently, Kaylee's family had said that she was trying to get back together with Jack, and she had previously broken up with him, so that could theoretically explain all those calls. Again, this is why you do not claim anything is true or untrue, because you don't know. I mean, obviously that's a curiosity. Now that there's more information about a closer time of death, it seems that it's very possible that it had nothing to do with it. Now, again, we really don't know for sure, but yeah, thus far, more information has been revealed regarding that. People also speculate that Kohberger was just that exhausted from stabbing 4 people that he just didn't have the energy for the other roommates, even if he knew they were there. So, also, regarding them being killed in their sleep, I mean, why was that reported early on if that's not accurate? And then, of course, there's various inconsistencies. And then, of course, plenty of speculation on why the roommate did not call the police immediately, especially after hearing what she heard and seeing the guy. Now, did she also see the knife in his hand or no? And how unusual, I mean, obviously that's unusual to see someone like that in the house, but at a party house? I mean, it's maybe slightly less unusual, but what about all the other reports in the area about someone breaking into the house with no sign of entry and just walking around and then leaving? I mean, that's creepy. Nobody's talking about that anymore. I mean, that's really creepy. And how many more times has that happened when someone didn't notice? Because if nothing was stolen and there was no actual sign of entry, people wouldn't even know. I mean, was this psycho practicing this? So, is he committing the stabbing? Like, you would think there's some kind of plan with the sheath. Is the sheath fastened to his body in some capacity? Or wasn't it? If it wasn't, he takes the knife out of the sheath, he stabs them, and then did he get distracted by something on the second floor, so he just ran out of the room, leaving the sheath there? Or was he in some kind of weird state due to killing, if this is his first crime, if this is his first murders? Is he kind of zoned out and not thinking clearly, which is why he leaves the sheath there, and then he doesn't realize that until the next day? So, a few interesting pieces of information from some commenters here playing devil's advocate on all the evidence. One, I go to Moscow often because I don't want to be in the bar scene in Pullman and run into my students. I guess this is what Kohberger's lawyers would say. Two, I have no idea how he'll explain being around the house at 9 a.m., but afternoon he just says he's a criminology student and wanted a front row seat to the crime scene. 3, DNA is damning. Only thing I can think of would be he sold a knife recently. 4, eyewitness. Multiple guys have bushy eyebrows and slender frames. Another poster posted this. He could claim to have a connection to someone in one of the apartments near the house. A drug dealer, friend, hookup, etc. I guess it depends on how accurately they can triangulate the cell phone pings. DNA on the sheath is pretty damning, though. I'm sure he ditched the weapon and hoped they find it. And all of this is before they had access to his car, which I'm sure is riddled with DNA. They also got a DoorDash delivery 20 minutes beforehand. They'll probably try and pin it on that poor guy. Hopefully he's fat and has groomed eyebrows. Wow. A response here, DoorDash tracks their drivers. I'd say they cleared that guy or gal quick. I would say they were nice and freaked out after reading this, though, how close they were to either being a victim or a witness. So scary. Just going through the timeline again, though, if Kohberger was watching and he sees the DoorDash, does he specifically wait until DoorDash delivery driver leaves and then he attacks? Or wouldn't he want to wait even longer to make sure they were asleep instead of possibly alert? I mean, again, obviously trying to make sense of a psycho, but just, yeah, it's a little weird. Another post here. What's bothering me is that he seemingly knew where to go to do what he wanted to do, all at 4 a.m. and without forcing an entry. How to get inside, where to find the victims, how to leave. To me, this suggests this may not have been his first time inside the house. Were all his previous trips to the area solely stalking related and from the street, or was he entering the home, whether criminally or by invitation? His seeming comfort with the structure and the use of the knife as a murder weapon really makes me think this was a targeted killing by a narcissist who got rejected by this crew somehow and took it very personally. Put another way, I am pretty sure they knew him, if only as a creep, and I'd wager this wasn't his first time in the house. A response here, it would have been super easy to get inside that house. There is law enforcement body cam footage from a recent party where dozens of kids are there, but none of the residents are there. Now, this is another curiosity. I don't know if that was verified that 0 residents were there. Maybe 1 or 2 of them were there. But if that's true, that none of them were there, I mean, that's kind of weird. How often is a party house used as a party house where there's not a single resident there? That's a little weird, I would think. I don't know. Are there any college party people who can answer that?
We're only here for a noise complaint. Come to the damn door. Finally.
No one's here at all.
So everyone here is trespassing?
Well, no one's here that's trespassing, but no one that lives here is here right now.
So where'd they go?
They're just not here. I have no clue where they went. No clue.
So you guys just throwing a party in their house at this
They were
time?
here at one point. They're not here right now. I just searched all the rooms.
They left and went over to some other party, and everyone is about to leave and go over to another party.
Okay. Who does live here? What are their names?
I am actually not sure. I live across the street. I just came over. I haven't drank a drop.
Male, female?
I think it's mainly females. I think it's like 4 females.
What sorority are they affiliated with?
I don't know.
I don't
Yeah, you
know
do.
I don't know if they're associated with it. I don't know.
I guarantee you they're associated with a sorority. As many of them are living here. It's an off-campus sorority house. I've been a cop for 22 years here. I'm not stupid. Don't play dumb games with me. I would rather deal with this as a noise complaint than getting a hold of the Greek council and the Greek board and all of that and the dean of students and playing all these stupid fucking games. All I want to do is deal with the noise complaint. Because I guarantee you there's a lot of underage drinking because they left their alcohol behind.
Do you want us to try and get a name or a phone number?
Please,
and
if
we
you
can
could.
call someone?
We just need to talk to somebody who lives here, because otherwise I have to be under the assumption you guys are unlawfully entered because no one who lives here is here.
Okay.
Right?
We'll go.
So I need to verify that there was a party here. Now everyone left, so thank you.
We'll be right back.
Thanks,
Sorry, we're
guys.
not trying to make your life.
I understand. I just letting you know this is how it's going to play out. I'm not going anywhere until I talk to somebody who actually lives
Just
there.
no
You
one
guys
that
mind
lives
to
here.
go for us? That way we can get some sort of communication between us
No,
and them.
no one that
Come in.
lives here is here right now. So
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do.
Thank you.
this is one of the owners that lives here. She's on the phone right now.
Hi, this is Officer Welsh from Moscow Police Department. Who am I speaking with? Maddie, 1 second. Let me turn the volume up on this phone here.
People want to be dumb.
All right, can you hear me, Maddie?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Do you live at 1122 Queen Street?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, hey, the reason that we're here is that we received a noise complaint of loud music, partying. Okay. Once we approached the house, people started running away. They left a bunch of alcohol behind. We're not even coming for alcohol. We're coming for the noise complaint. And then we sat here for approximately 10 minutes trying to knock on the door, and no one would come to the door until these two gentlemen came down and actually answered the door. So,
So any rando could have probably walked into the house perhaps several times without rousing any suspicion, and perhaps even without the knowledge of the residents. Moreover, it would have been hard for anyone to ID him, since who knows who else was even there at the time. That would also make a good alibi as to why his DNA was in the residence. It is kind of weird, though, specifically the sheath. Like, if it was his DNA on, random counters and stuff, along with hundreds of other people, that's not suspicious. But on a sheath found right next to the body, some would also say, does that smell like planting? The sheath, right? It's not like the sheath was dropped in the hallway on his way escaping or something. Like, right on the bed next to the victim? That's kind of weird. It's almost is it too convenient? Maybe. Or was he just that much of a state he didn't notice? I don't know. That's weird. That's almost as weird as in the Delphi cases. There's an unspent round right next to the bodies. There's a lot of weirdness in a lot of these cases. Yeah. Wow, here's a really creepy comment by Improvement Silly 2895. My opinion is that he had been in there before while everyone was asleep, seeing how much noise there is. Now, that is one of the creepiest things I've ever read, specifically because there's reports of intruders in homes in the area, in other homes. Nobody was killed, apparently nothing was stolen, but it's like he's testing to see how he can get in and out of homes without making noise. That's so creepy. That is just beyond creepy. So yeah, if he had done that numerous times prior, that could theoretically explain his comfort with the layout and everything. And we'll get back to this theory, but did he plan to kill absolutely everybody and he just got tired? Because there are accounts of stabbing serial killers who said that they're just absolutely exhausted even after only one or two victims. Even if they're in pretty decent shape. Obviously nobody wants to imagine killing other people, but you can imagine when you're in a fight for your own life, or even if you're like, you could think about any kind of scenario if you get into a fight, or if you fall while hiking down a cliff or something, or a steep incline. Even just a few seconds of super exertive activity where it's kind of life or death. Hopefully not too many people listen. Nobody on this podcast listening has it in the direction of killing anybody, but in terms of surviving, not necessarily another person, just some kind of situation, or out in a storm, whatever the case may be, there's just some kind of high adrenaline situation, and you get tired pretty quickly. Within seconds. You're not going to last minutes in super high exertion, super high adrenaline situation. So is that a factor? Does that explain a lot of this? Another very astute commenter here, Moon over Madagascar, my take on why Kohberger walked right past the roommate. He didn't see her. I think during the investigation, law enforcement said the roommates were asleep and didn't hear anything because law enforcement didn't want to tip off Kohberger that there was an eyewitness. Wow, okay. Other people are speculating that he believed that he actually did kill everybody in the... I don't know. Again, if he was in there... Another post here. He really went out of the way for Xana and Ethan. It really makes me wonder if the Mad Greek restaurant is the link between the suspect and the victims, and we'll get into that in a moment. Other posters are speculating that Kohberger was already upstairs, either hiding or controlling the dog at the time of the DoorDash arrival. Huh. How lucky is this guy, though? In terms of not getting caught that particular night. In terms of, if he didn't know about the DoorDash, if he's already in there either plotting or hiding or doing whatever, he doesn't know about the DoorDash, it comes and leaves, does he not even know about it even after it left? Or did he possibly see or hear some kind of something, and that's why he either hid or remained silent longer? Whatever the case may be. Yeah, there's still plenty of questions to be answered here. But let's move on to some major Major mind shocks. So meaw.com, which a lot of people chastise, actually relatively accurate. Let's look at some expert opinions and then further damning information. Juna Tharakin posted this January 17th. I think he's killed before. Experts speculate the possibility of calling card left by BRYAN KOHBERGER. Experts have suggested Idaho murder suspect BRYAN KOHBERGER is likely to have committed murder before and at the crime scene. He may have left behind a calling card. The speculation was put forth at a Dr. Phil special episode Friday, January 13th, where the experts convened to discuss the suspect's patterns and the evidence collected from the Quadruple Massacre. Jonathan Gilliam, former FBI special agent, expressed that investigators will locate the knife used for the grisly murders as he thinks it will be part of his operational tools, as similar to the suspect's car, suggesting that the suspect may have left the sheath in the murder home intentionally. Now, theoretically, that would make more sense based on who Kohberger is, unless we're talking split personality or psychotic break situation. Mercedes Colwyn, the trial attorney, further stated that they will find the weapon eventually. It could be. I mean, it's almost as if, and we've seen this with other killers, it's their calling card. I got this, she said during the special. Especially if you think you're smarter than everybody else, and he certainly does. He had gloves, at least that's what's presumed, that he had gloves. He tried to cover himself and did something to dispose of the clothing. If he, in fact, is the killer, then of course this is something that could have just been a calling card and left there. Now, would he be dumb enough not to wipe his DNA from the sheath? If he was going to do that? Another article on this by Sumanti Sen on Mia here. Why did BRYAN KOHBERGER leave the knife sheath at the crime scene? Experts say it was a remarkably clever move. A criminologist has suggested that BRYAN KOHBERGER may have left the knife sheath at the crime scene in a remarkably clever move. The weapon used to stab 4 University of Idaho students to death is believed to be a fixed-blade K-bar style knife, which has still not been found. However, DNA found on a knife sheath recovered from the crime scene linked KOHBERGER 28 to the murders. David Wilson, a professor at Birmingham City University in the UK, KOHBERGER may have left sheath behind as part of an elaborate plan to make sure he was not convicted. However, Wilson did not elaborate on why he believed this may be the case. Would a highly skilled, intelligent student who is teaching criminology, a PhD student, have made such a basic error? Wilson told ITV's This Morning. Wilson was speaking in response to Philip Schofield, saying leaving the knife sheath was a remarkably clumsy move on KOHBERGER's part. One of the things that's really struck me about the person that's been arrested and accused of this is he is intelligent and high-functioning, Wilson said. Well, let me speculate on a Bruce McGuire theory. This is one of the McGuire theories I've come up with here. Again, I am not alleging it is true or untrue. This is MindShock, where the only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. So, again, a lot of these theories are mutually exclusive. A lot of people don't know what that means. On MindShock, we go over all the theories. Obviously, a lot of theories are at odds with each other. Mutually exclusive means they can't all be true because some of them necessitate aspects that would have to be untrue in other theories. This is all very, very basic, but for whatever reason, a lot of goofs in the comment section. So, here's the McGuire theory. If he knew he couldn't get away with it, I mean, the evidence with the car, all that, was his strategy to make it look like someone framed him? And are there things that haven't yet been found out where he maybe, let's say he's really guilty. Is it possible he planted some seeds of alibis or just some major problems for the prosecution? And because leaving the sheath with your DNA right on it next to the murder victim, now either that's extremely stupid or that's some kind of extremely bold 3D chess move. Again, I am not alleging which of these it is. Or, of course, stupid in the sense if he was exhausted or in some kind of mental state and he just forgot it, whatever. Okay, again, wouldn't it be... It just seems kind of weird if it was found right next to the body. That seems like either he left it on purpose or it was planted, and that's weird. You would think if he left it, it would be, in the middle of some kind of scramble. Unless there was a scramble on the bed and it just happened to be next. It was in the scramble that he lost it, which just happened to be there. I mean, was it out in the open or was it like partially underneath covers or something else? I mean, they didn't really specify. So, yes, maybe it wasn't just right out in the open right next to the body because that would seem like a plant. But if it was right next to the body, but in the middle of some kind of scuffle or sheets messed up, I mean, something where it wasn't necessarily super obvious as he was leaving, so where he could have forgotten it. But if it was obviously planted with his own blood, I mean, this is kind of weird. Would he leave? Has any serial killer employed this as their strategy? I mean, I've seen it on some TV show once. I don't remember which one. But in the mainstream, are there any known cases where a serial killer is basically framing himself and leaving evidence for himself while very cunningly and craftily establishing some kind of a semi-bulletproof alibi, even if he's guilty? Because if there's some kind of breadcrumb trail to somebody who he wants to set up as framing him, and he planted some kind of evidence against whoever's framing him, or whoever in the narrative that he's establishing, somebody's framing him, and he planted evidence for the framer. And that way, it would explain away any of these little mistakes. Is he smart enough to know that in this high-tech era, he was unlikely to have gotten away with it unless he took extreme precautions, which he obviously didn't, using his own car? Is that why he was so bold as to continue using his own damn car after the murders? Because he already had some kind of 3D chess game in play. Again, I'm not saying this is the case, but if it's the case, does that explain a lot of this? Obviously, if he's just psycho, then it doesn't matter how smart he is, because he's not actually going to be utilizing the intelligence for a lot of this. So, a lot of different possibilities on the table. But let's go over another article here. The evidence is overwhelming. Ex-FBI agent calls BRYAN KOHBERGER a controlling individual, by Arunave Banerjee, January 16th. At the University of Idaho's murder suspects, BRYAN KOHBERGER awaits his next court hearing, scheduled for June 26th. A former FBI agent has claimed that the evidence is overwhelming to convict him. KOHBERGER, 28, was arrested December 30th, 2022, from his parents' home in Pennsylvania and has been charged with the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students. Key information about the case, including phone data that showed KOHBERGER visited his murder scene at least 12 times before the killings, and the suspect left a knife sheath with his DNA on it, was revealed in the probable cause affidavit, which was made public January 5th. The 4 victims, Kayla Gonzalez, 21, Madison Mogen, 21, Xana Coronado, 20, and Ethan Chapin, 20, were stabbed to death on November 13th, 2022. As we learn more about the Idaho killing suspect, BRYAN KOHBERGER, more questions about his past are being raised. Former FBI agent Stuart Kaplan believes KOHBERGER is a controlling individual and that there was overwhelming evidence to convict. I mean, he doesn't really specify further on the exact overwhelming evidence. DNA on knife sheath, most critical evidence against BRYAN KOHBERGER, says ex-FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, by Jasveen Kaur. BRYAN Christopher KOHBERGER, 28, who has been charged with the brutal murders of 4 University of Idaho students, was arrested December 30th at his parents' home, Eastern Pennsylvania, more than 2,500 miles away from the town of Moscow. The probable cause affidavit, released January 5th, revealed some key details of the case, such as the phone data, pointing out that KOHBERGER was in the area of the murders at least 12 times before the killings, and the suspect had left behind a knife sheath at the crime scene with his DNA on it. Also, the quadruple murder accused was seen by one of the survivors, Dylan Mortensen. Andrew McCabe, an ex-FBI official, in a recent interview mentioned that the DNA found in the knife sheath is the most critical evidence. KOHBERGER, a PhD student in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at the neighboring Washington State University, has been arrested for the murders and is now facing 4 counts of first-degree murder and felony burglary charges. KOHBERGER waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing as he appeared in court Thursday, January 12th. The probable cause affidavit points out several important pieces of evidence that link KOHBERGER to the murders. While speaking to CNN about this, McCabe discussed the most critical piece of evidence in the case against the suspect. So, clearly the DNA here is number one for most people. Some people actually think the car and phone data is even more damning, as, again, if he had been in the house before during a party, he could have just said he left the sheath there, although why would it be in the bedroom right next to it? Unless, You know what's kind of crazy? Let's say it was somebody else. Would they just grab a knife sheath and toss it right next to the bed if they were framing somebody? Or was the sheath at the house? Did KOHBERGER show off the knife and sheath at a party, let's say days or weeks prior? And who's ever there in the house, they took the sheath. They didn't know it was his. There's just a bunch of stuff in the house. A knife sheath looks pretty damning. They committed the murder with a knife. Would they just toss the sheath right next to the bodies and leave, not even knowing who the sheath belonged to? Obviously, unless, it would really have to be a frame job, because if they knew Kohberger was stalking them, what does that mean? If Kohberger is not the murderer, and if he's just a stalker, some kind of creepy stalker, did someone else know that? Again, I'm not claiming he is guilty or innocent. Obviously, the trial has not happened yet, so we haven't seen the totality of the evidence to determine if it is if it can proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he's the perpetrator, or possibly one of the perpetrators. So we really don't know. I mean, yeah, I mean, if you were gonna commit murder and you knew your intended victim had a stalker, would you not frame the stalker? Kohberger waived his right to a speedy trial. Okay, that's also interesting, but okay. Jasveen Kaur also posted this article January 13th. Probable cause affidavit against Idaho suspect BRYAN KOHBERGER has lots of weaknesses, says law expert. Recently, Jason Labar, that's an interesting name for an attorney, Labar. Kohberger's attorney suggested the affidavit contains many holes. Adding to this, even law expert Lara Yaretsayan warned that the probable cause affidavit showed weaknesses and places where the defense can poke holes. In an interview with News Nation journalist Brian Enton, Pennsylvania lawyer Jason Labar, who represented Kohberger in his extradition trial, contended that holes in the police evidence could undermine the prosecution's case against Kohberger. Labar said there's no direct evidence against BRYAN, so there are cases where the defense will be attacking each piece of evidence individually. I believe at least that would be my trial strategy. So not that definitive of a statement, but yeah, I mean, obviously, what if he admits to the stalking and doesn't admit to the murdering? I mean, what does that mean? Another article here by Arunavi Banerjee. Yachmet's former FBI agent Pete Yachmetz said this: murders look pretty premeditated, and Kohberger was obviously surveying the victims. He also stated, Kohberger is not the great mastermind he may have thought he was. Yachmetz believes that the Idaho suspect created a very amateur mistake of leaving the murder weapon sheath behind. The former FBI agent believes that this could have happened for two possible reasons. Either he was alarmed by the victim's screams, or he had to use the weapon before the time he had planned to use it. Now, supposedly there were no actual screams, though, right? There could have been like a scuffle or something. I mean, I don't know. That's still kind of unknown as to the extent of screams, but he had to use the weapon before the time he planned to use it. So was he hiding? There's the DoorDash, he wants to wait longer, and then somebody stumbles upon him. Because if he rushes one of the girls, let's say one of the girls is on the bed, possibly not even asleep. The other girl's moving out and about and maybe runs into him. Does he just put his hand over her mouth and push her onto the bed, killing her, then killing the other one? Is that how that played out? So did he think that they were getting ready for bed when one of them was up and about? I mean, again, there's a lot of different ways this could have happened. And did he hear something on the second floor which made him run and leave the sheath, where he just stopped thinking about the sheath? I mean, yeah, I mean, obviously we don't know. Another interesting statement here, former federal prosecutor Duncan Levin said this: evidence, a lot of smoke, no definitive fire. Evidence against BRYAN KOHBERGER not irrefutable. He said the evidence laid out in the affidavit does not place Kohberger in that house on the night of the murders. That's an interesting point. So does this mean they have a good case against for stalking, but not murder? Supposedly, there's a lot of videos there. I mean, FoxNews.com, Michael Ruiz article, Idaho murders, mystery white cars on video near the crime scene day after student stabbings. So there are videos of white cars in the area while police were there. How many times did he come back? This is weird. Obviously, it doesn't mean it's him. What? A white car was seen on Nez Pierce Drive near the Sigma Chi fraternity house November 14th, the day after 4 University of Idaho students were murdered just 200 yards away by a masked man who police said was driving a white Hyundai Elantra. Huh. Obviously, white Elantras aren't exactly the most rare vehicle of all time, so mean, I wonder how many there are in the area. Was there, I forget, was it like around 50 or something? But if it was creeping around and then speeding off, I mean, that's kind of weird. So this white vehicle was also there 2:08 p.m. So how many times did he go and come back? Because supposedly, again, in the affidavit, it mentioned that he went there around 9 a.m. before the police were even there. Now he's coming back again. I mean, it's not that far from WSU, so yeah, I mean, pretty creepy either way. So here's an article by Jenna Anna Matthew. Bryan Kohberger allegedly drove by Idaho murder house at least 4 times the morning of the killings. Newly surfaced footage appears to show the suspect's car driving past the student's rented apartment building on the day of and after the gruesome massacre. New bombshell video shows that the phone of PhD criminology student was found near the apartment of the student who was killed. Kohberger's phone repeatedly rang near the crime scene at 9 a.m., just 5 hours after he stabbed the students. Wait, he dropped his phone there? Wait, what? Phone of PhD criminology student was found near the apartment of the student who was killed. Kohberger's phone rang near the crime scene at 9 a.m., just 5 hours of. In addition, his car was driving past the scene at least 4 times between 3:29 a.m. and 4:04 a.m. on the morning of the murders, according to footage recovered by the police. Around 4:20 a.m., the same car was captured on video driving away from the scene at a high rate of speed. Yeah, this article doesn't mention any ringing. Maybe this article just is misstating that his phone was pinging, not ringing. You know what else is creepy? Some people... So in this article by Srinija Grandi, also on Mia, Idaho murder victim Zaina Kernodle got DoorDash delivery, played online videos minutes before murder. It states here... According to the report, she first awoke around 4 a.m. to what she believed to be Gonzalez playing with her dogs in one of the bedrooms above. A short while later, she claimed she overheard what she believed to be Gonzalez stating, "There's someone here." However, a forensic examination of Kernodle's phone revealed that she was awake and using the TikTok app at the time, indicating that the sound may have originated from the video. Huh. So that was roughly around 4:12 a.m. Minutes later, they're dead. And then, of course, it wasn't until 7 hours later until the call to the police. All right, another article here. High school yearbook reveals Bryan Kohberger wanted to be an Army Ranger and attended law enforcement class. By Anjana, January 4th. Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger, 28, aspired to be an Army Ranger and is featured in his 2011 Pleasant Valley High School yearbook. In the image obtained by Fox News Digital, Bryan can be seen exercising in the uniform with other students. According to Fox News Digital, the picture is captioned, "Sophomore Bryan Kohberger performs his daily push-ups as part of his law enforcement class. Kohberger used the skills he learned to help him reach his goal to one day serve in the Army Rangers." Meanwhile, Sarah Healy, a former high school schoolmate of Bryan, opined, "Bryan was bullied a lot and I never got a chance to say something to defend him because he would always run away." She also claimed that he was picked on by a group of girls who would throw things at him and tell him to go away, creep. The 28-year-old was a PhD student at the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Washington State University. Bryan has been taken into custody in connection to the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Zaina Kernodle. He was charged with 4 counts and felony burglary. Okay, so interesting background there. Another interesting anecdote here by Divya Kishore, January 9th. Normally chatty Bryan Kohberger went silent when Idaho murders were discussed in class, says friend. A classmate of the Idaho quadruple murder accused has spoken about him after his arrest. Ben Roberts had reportedly studied with Bryan Kohberger and claimed that though the 28-year-old was the outgoing type, he did not use to open his mouth whenever a discussion around the killings of Kaylee, Madison Mogen, Ethan, and Zaina took place in class. Roberts told the Idaho Statements he seemed gregarious and outgoing. That was really the only impression that I got. He was making the rounds. He definitely seemed a little more eager than some of the others that were present to go around and introduce himself. The criminal justice graduate student went on to explain, Bryan only talked about his interest in forensic psychology. He was an incredibly strong student and talked during class every time. He sat front and center and was not hiding or tucking away in the back. He was right there in the middle of it. But then he mentioned that he had noticed something unusual in Kohberger whenever the murders of the 4 students were brought up. Roberts said he was completely silent before expressing his feelings about the arrest of the 20-year-old man who has been pressed with a felony burglary charge in addition to the murder charges. Roberts said, I'm shocked. I can't believe this person was around me after they allegedly committed such a horrible crime. It's a story that affected people, so I don't know if I kind of want to satiate curiosity, but do that by offering something so people don't speculate as much. Besides, Roberts reportedly pointed out that Kohberger had a negative approach whenever a female was talking. He shared, it's hard to see a pattern emerging while you're in the classroom, but he would tend to push back when a female was talking more than a male talking. He was more keen on asking probing questions and things like that. Another student whose identity has not been revealed agreed with his classmate when stating that the suspect talked down to LGBTQ plus individuals who are in a marginalized community who were disabled and women. Those who were disabled and also women. Okay, so let's take a look at this body cam footage from Kohberger and his father being stopped.
Recording.
Hello. How you doing? How y'all doing today? Good, good. Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van. Pulled you over for tailgating. Is this your car? Okay, cool. Where are you headed?
Well, we're coming from WSU, and we're standing early.
What's WSU?
Yeah, I go to university basically. That is SWAT team area.
So we're okay. I'm having a hard time hearing you because of the traffic. So you're coming from Washington State University,
Yeah.
and you're going where? Oh,
We're going to be going to Pennsylvania.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're slightly punchy because we drive for hours.
Hours, days.
Hours to drive. Well, almost a day.
Okay. And what did you say about some SWAT team thing? Or
Yeah, there was a mass shooting and everything. We don't know if it's-
Where?
This was on essentially
Interesting.
well, it's horrifying because you go to the university, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So y'all work at the university there? Or?
I actually do work there.
Oh,
PhD in criminal.
okay. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that incident. Just yesterday, or?
This happened about an hour and a half ago. We're still wrapping it up. I'm not sure there's 2 shootings because they did shoot somebody.
Let's see.
And then we don't know about that actually. They were there with shooting out of the window or something.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay?
Oh,
all right. Thank you. Appreciate you.
What does everybody make of this? And some allege that is a cut on his hand. Of course, that could theoretically be from anything. On Jana PV posted this article. Video shows Bryan Kohberger calmly telling cops about mass shooting on WSU campus when pulled over the first time. Police have released footage of Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger getting pulled over along with his father, Michael Kohberger. for driving too close to a van on December 15th on I-70 outside Indianapolis. According to the Daily Mail, the Hancock County Sheriff's Department captured the moment an officer approached the suspect outside Indiana. In the video, we can hear the duo claiming that there's been a massive shooting at Washington State University. Later, his father added that a SWAT team descended on the campus, and the father also stated that the shooting was horrifying. Meanwhile, Kohberger can be seen speaking calmly to the police officers and also stated regarding how long they had been driving. The father also said they left Washington State University to head home to Pennsylvania. He was caught for the second time within 9 minutes while driving along I-70 in December. He was giving only a verbal warning in both cases. Kohberger was arrested Friday, December 31st for killing 4 University of Idaho students. And you know what's kind of weird? When he's already getting pulled over, let's say the second time, I mean, what is he suspecting? Because they're just letting him off with warnings, but, I mean, one time, okay, but the second time? What is he thinking? Does he know they're onto him at that point? So supposedly the local law enforcement was told to pull him over to kind of see what's going on, possibly see if he had any injuries, etc. All speculation, of course. Some more posts here, possibly scrutinizing Dylan Mortensen. Some people, of course, believe she's possibly involved. Obviously, on MINDSHOCK, I would never make a claim that anything is true or untrue. Were victims alive when Dylan Mortensen froze? Internet wonders if immediate 911 call would have helped, by Deepak Kumar, January 7th. The affidavit related to the 4 homicides in Idaho, allegedly carried out by BRYAN KOHBERGER, has provided some serious insight into the preliminary investigation. One such detail provided in the document was that Dylan Mortensen, one of the 2 surviving roommates, saw the suspect leave the house after brutally stabbing her 4 friends to death. On one hand, the people taken aback by this revelation complimented Moscow police on keeping Dylan safe, as she was their prime witness, and on the other hand, people are questioning Dylan's choice of action. Some burning questions are, how did she go to sleep after the incident? Why didn't she call 911 sooner? Now people are asking if the victims were alive when she saw Kohberger. The confusion here is why Dylan Mortensen, the surviving roommate, delayed informing police about the murders, and why BRYAN KOHBERGER chose the 4 slain Idaho students as his victims. She lived through the attack with Bethany Funk. According to her, the suspect was dressed in all black with a mask covering his face and heard one of her housemates say, "There's someone here." The suspect said, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." The situation could have gone differently, but Dylan froze, which is an understandable human behavior as per many people online. Now people are asking if the victims were alive when Dylan saw Kohberger. One user asked on Reddit, were the victims still alive when the surviving witness froze? Could their deaths have been avoidable if she called the police prior to 8 hours after the stabbings took place? Well, aside from that, though, like, why wasn't, whether they were dead or alive, I mean, they might have died within minutes anyway after that, depending on, their injuries supposedly pretty severe. So, why did it take 8 hours to call the police? That's the question there, because if she saw the guy, okay, she froze, that's understandable. He runs away, she locks herself in her room, also understandable completely. Why not call the police then and there? Or, if she's not that scared and not that sure what happened, she could call out, possibly. That might not be smart if the killer's still in the house, but then again, why not call the police? If she was dead sure that the killer left the house, if she was completely sure that the killer left the house, she could also investigate at that point. Why wait 6 to 8 hours? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Unless she lost consciousness, she passed out then and there, but... Another article here by Juna Tharakin, January 7th. Idaho murders. Cops still baffled why surviving roommates waited 8 hours before calling 911. Investigators are still puzzled why it took surviving roommate in the Idaho quadruple murders, Dylan Mortensen, 8 hours to call 911 after the brutal slayings took place in their rented home in Moscow, according to a law enforcement source. So, if this source is legitimate, that means there was no adequate explanation given, because the law enforcement source is still puzzled. On November 13th, when the 4 students were stabbed to death by suspect BRYAN KOHBERGER, Mortensen, 21, opened her bedroom door around 4 a.m. and saw an unknown figure dressed in black and wearing a mask leaving. The unknown figure fled the scene, taking the home's back exit, as per her statement to the police. However, around 8 hours later, surviving roommate Bethany Funk dialed 911 to inform the deaths of the University of Idaho students. The 8-hour delay has been something that we are puzzled over. We don't know if it was an issue of intoxication or of fear, an investigator said, according to the New York Post. So, yeah, Mortensen wasn't alleged. If this is accurate, Mortensen was not even the one who called 911. It was the other roommate. So, yeah. What does everybody make of this? I mean, I don't know if an adequate theory explaining this has been presented thus far. So let's go into who he possibly could be targeting. Another article here by Meenakshi Sengupta. Did Bryan Kohberger accidentally kill 4 at Idaho home? Internet wonders if he planned to attack only 1. The mystery of the killer behind the murders of the 4 Idaho University students seems to be resolving after the arrest of 28-year-old criminology student Bryan Kohberger December 30th, 2022. But people are still wondering if there's a possibility the killings accidentally turned into mass murder. Taking the conversation to Reddit, one user wrote, quote, I wonder if he only had one person in mind, i.e. Maddie, and everyone else was very unlucky in being in the wrong place at the wrong time. One theory from initial evidence is that he was stalking someone, having been near the house multiple times in the months leading up to the crime. Let's suppose this was Maddie, given it's her room he went to first. Kohberger, for whatever sick reason, decides he wants to kill her. He arrives at the house with his one victim in mind. But as fate has it, Kaylee is in the same bed and not asleep in her own room, so that's one additional victim he had not planned on. The user added by saying, I just wonder if the other 3 victims were surprises for him. Many have speculated this can't be his first murder, given he killed 4 at once. But perhaps this wasn't how he'd intended it, and it was an unfortunate turn of fate. It spiraled out of control. Another user said, quote, I also think he went there intending to commit 1 murder, and it spiraled out of control. The individual also pointed out the shocking revelation that the alleged killer returned to the scene hours after the massacre and wrote, given he returns to the crime scene roughly 5 hours later and then continues to go about his day with little sleep, suggests he was still pumped up on adrenaline. One more wrote, I've been thinking that he may not have even gone in there with the intention to kill. Some stalkers just like to be in the homes of the people they are obsessed with. One of the girls woke up, and once things started, it just kept escalating. Okay, that's an interesting theory. We haven't spent a lot of time on this theory. If Kohberger is the same guy who's been reported as entering people's homes stealthily, not stealing anything, I mean, is this the type of guy that just wanted to do that? And maybe he's done that a bunch of times in that particular home as well. Very, very creepy to think about. And if no one's ever woken up while he was doing that, there was never an issue. Another article here, Varnika Srivastava posted this January 11th. Could it be Bryan Kohberger? Internet finds Maddie Mogen's Poshmark exchanged with disgruntled customer. More than a month after the horrifying murders of 4 University of Idaho students, the suspect, Bryan Christopher Kohberger, was arrested and taken into custody. After being extradited from Pennsylvania, Kohberger is currently standing trial in Idaho for the alleged murders of Xana, Ethan, Madison, and Kaylee, which occurred on November 13th. Since the murder occurred, several web sleuths have been digging deeply through publicly available information about the victims of the suspect and their families, including the social media profiles across the internet. Recently, a Reddit user, while on a deep dive on Madison Mogen, shared a YouTube video about her profile on Poshmark, a social commerce marketplace, and discussed about how a user got persistent in his interactions with Maddie over a sweater. The Redditor wrote, Maddie Mogen Poshmark, very disgruntled customer from October 16th to October 30th, 2022. The user further added, quote, I just found this last night, found it odd but dismissed it, probably nothing, but I found it odd how persistent the person got with Maddie over a sweater that she had sold to them on Poshmark, but didn't ship or respond to the customer's requests for 2 weeks. And that would be really weird if this was all over some kind of bad sweater. But why would he be buying this? I mean, actually, I don't know if he's a stalker obsessed with these people. I mean, he might be buying random clothes from them. I mean, who knows? Like, yeah, look at the guy's photo. I mean, is there anything that guy wouldn't do? It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, don't judge a book by its cover, of course. But, I mean, that is not the most normal-looking individual. I will leave it at that regarding his look. He is not the most normal-looking individual. So, let's move on to the Mad Greek restaurant where Madison Mogen and Xana Kernodle worked. Now, if he is stalking these people, again, it is possible he's buying things from them online and stalking them on various different websites. So the Mad Greek restaurant, the Mad Greek, okay, interesting name there. Bryan Kohberger ate vegan pizza twice at Mad Greek restaurant where Madison Mogen and Xana Kernodle worked, allegedly, by Pragata Priya. Again, all this information is disputed. This is MINDSHOCK. I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. BRYAN KOHBERGER allegedly dined at the restaurant where 2 of the victims worked in the weeks before the horrific murders of 4 University of Idaho students in November 2022. KOHBERGER frequented the Mad Greek restaurant in Moscow, Idaho, according to a former employee. The former employee said that KOHBERGER had visited the eatery at least twice to get vegan pizza. Madison Mogen and Xana Kernadel, 2 of the victims, worked as waitresses at the establishment. Mogen, Kernadel, and Gonzalez, the 3rd female murder victim, were all once followed on Instagram by a now-deleted account that appeared to belong to KOHBERGER. It is unclear if the girls ever waited on KOHBERGER or if they ever interacted with him. In addition, People has confirmed that investigators have spoken with the Mad Greek staff members and owners and that law enforcement is aware of the restaurant visits. Additionally, they have gathered security footage from the restaurant and other businesses. According to the former employee, KOHBERGER's visits to the Mad Greek were not unusual, and the main reason he stood out was because of a specific order. As a strict vegan, KOHBERGER would ensure that his meal had not been prepared with animal-derived products. Other people have also stated he wouldn't even eat with any kind of utensils or utilize any kind of pots or pans that were also used to make food derived from animals. So quite vigilant. But is the sheath 100% leather, though? That's a good question as well. Now, here's the rebuttal. So this was the allegations from the alleged employee. Follow-up article here by Pragata Priya, January 21st. Not true. Mad Greek restaurant owner where 2 Idaho victims worked denies BRYAN KOHBERGER dined there. And, of course, isn't that what they would do if they're trying to distance themselves from the investigation? Whether it was true or not true, or perhaps police told them to say that. The proprietor of a restaurant in Moscow, Idaho, where 2 of the murdered students worked, says the rumor that their suspected killer, BRYAN KOHBERGER, visited the establishment twice is false. According to a former employee quoted in People article from January 19th, KOHBERGER visited the Mad Greek restaurant where Madison Mogen and Xana Kernadel worked and ordered a vegan pizza. Jackie Fisher, the proprietor of Mad Greek, has now claimed in a Facebook post that that article is completely fabricated information. Fisher wrote, "The news media should really do their due diligence before running a story with completely fabricated information. This will be my only response to this story from People. It is not true." I mean, technically it wasn't fabricated. They were reporting allegations from an alleged employee. So maybe they verified that it was really an employee, and if so, how could they verify that the employee was telling the truth without having the actual footage that the police have from the area, or receipts or the financial trail? So they technically, the story was true in terms of the story was reporting allegations. I mean, this isn't rocket science. A lot of people have trouble with this. I also have not forbidden any employees from speaking to reporters. We all decided collectively to support the families and not share anything that could potentially harm the investigation or cause the families more distress, she added. Fisher was devastated to learn that 2 of her employees had died, she told Fox News. "All I can say right now is that we're all just deeply saddened by the loss of both Maddie and Xana. All of the workers are just shook right now." So make of that what you will. Now let's move on to alleged theories that KOHBERGER either is innocent or did not act alone. Actually, let's go over one more issue with Kaylee Gonzalez that we actually went over on the previous episodes. Internet convinced Kaylee Gonzalez was not the target in Idaho murders as she had moved out of the house. And we went over all of this before as well. By Deepak Kumar, January 15th. Many people have argued that the prime target in the Idaho quadruple murders was Kaylee Gonzalez and that Maddie Mogen, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernadel were collateral damage. However, there's a good amount of people who believe otherwise. The internet is convinced that Kaylee was not the target simply because she didn't live in the 3-story Idaho home the night she was brutally killed along with the 3 others. She had moved out. The 21-year-old Idaho victim had moved out of the off-campus house and only returned to show her new Range Rover to her friends, hence finding herself in the house at the worst time possible. Her parents previously told Dateline that she was set to graduate early and move to Texas for an IT job opportunity. Kaylee mainly had plans to meet her best friend Maddie and attend a party nearby. The 2 were found slain in the same bed November 13th. The man behind the crime is suspected to be BRYAN KOHBERGER. Now, one Redditor is arguing that Kaylee was in fact never a target. The post reads, "BRYAN had been stalking the home 12 times prior to the tragic event. I'm not sure about when Kaylee officially left, but we know she was only back for that night, and the killer probably did not know she was specifically coming back in town that night. I don't believe Kaylee was the target at all." The Redditor continues writing, "Why would he even been stalking the home and whatnot without her being there anymore? Even if he had just seen her out that night and something happened, it would not explain all the other previous cell ping trackings to that home prior. BK was not there for Kaylee. Many people agree with this point, especially after Kaylee's parents also clarified that she had gone there to only meet with her friends. Unless, of course, if he's stalking all the social media, he might have known that she was coming back for that night, and it would be the last chance to act. So maybe he was planning to kill Maddie anyway, but he also wanted to kill Kaylee. Again, let's not fall for these black and white logical fallacies. We have no idea what any of this means. None of this has been definitively proven in either direction yet. A post here by Owais Faruqi. He was innocent of the crimes. Bryan Kohberger's ex-lawyer, Jason Labar, finds flaws in evidence. When it's viewed individually, you can attack that evidence as a defense attorney, Labar told the host of Law and Crime on Sidebar podcast. The strongest piece of evidence so far has been the DNA found on the button sheath of the knife, which is the only evidence connecting him with the murders. Labar even shrugged that off, saying it was touch DNA or transfer DNA. Labar continued, which DNA would mean that it could remain on the sheath for an infinite period of time if undisturbed, he explained. That's one way of attacking that type of evidence that doesn't put him at the scene of the crime the night out, just that he merely touched that sheath at some point in time. I mean, that's a good point, but like, what opportunity would he have to touch a sheath that ended up next to a murder victim? So, let's get crazy here. Bryan Kohberger requests information on mystery co-defendant. Internet sleuths share wild theories by Sumanti Sen, January 13th. Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger waived his right to a speedy preliminary hearing as he appeared in court Thursday, January 12th. He will not be appearing in court again until June 26th. This week, the suspect and his defense team reportedly filed a request for discovery asking for information about a co-defendant in the case. According to Inside Edition, the probable cause affidavit does not identify a co-defendant. Authorities have also not suggested that Kohberger may have had an accomplice when he committed the crime. After being taken into custody last month, he had reportedly asked law enforcement whether another individual was arrested. Kohberger, 28, has been accused of fatally stabbing Gonzalez, Mogen, Kernodle, and Chapin in their off-campus three-story rented home November 13th. He was arrested December 30th. So there seems to be some kind of an issue here. There was a filing for information about a co-defendant. Now, again, police are obviously not going to reveal all they have in these affidavits for warrants and etc. So they probably do have a lot more. Whether or not that includes a co-defendant, we don't know. What if he was framed? Internet wonders if Idaho suspect Bryan Kohberger has a plausible defense by Veronica Srivastava, January 12th. After his arrest in Pennsylvania and subsequent extradition, Kohberger is now on trial for allegedly stabbing University of Idaho students Kernodle, Chapin, Mogen, and Gonzalez to death November 13th. Since his arrest, crime enthusiasts on the internet have floated various theories about the 28-year-old PhD student's personality traits and what drove him to the heinous crime. Recently, a Reddit user raised the possibility that Kohberger might have a plausible defense and wondered if he was framed for the murders after all. The Redditor wrote, what if BK does have a plausible defense? Before the claws come at me, hear me out, and yes, I'm 99% sure he's guilty, but we haven't heard his side of anything. True, it ain't looking good, but we all know that as followers of this case, it's been a roller coaster ride of twists and turns. I mean, yeah, it would be curious to see what he alleges his alibi even is. Web sleuths speculate if suspect Bryan Kohberger was only an accomplice, but not the killer. By Arunavi Banerjee. More speculations arise about the motive for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students by suspect Bryan Kohberger. A new subreddit thread theorized that Kohberger may not have been the actual killer, but instead only an accomplice. Kohberger was arrested December 30th for allegedly killing the 4 students. All 4 victims were stabbed to death with a fixed blade November 13, 2022. In the thread posted by Reddit in the discussion sub Bryan Kohberger, the user has laid out a series of points that theorize that the Idaho murder suspect was only an accomplice to the murders. I saw someone earlier mention this theory briefly, and it's one I've had since the PCA, but was scared to post about it, so I want to expand on it, the Redditor wrote, sharing the post. In the subreddit thread, the user expressed that several reported developments suggest that another person may have been involved in the crime that sent shockwaves across the country last year. Among the user's observations was that Kohberger reportedly asked police if someone else had been apprehended when he was being arrested. The user goes on to say, I bet it was someone who knew them. Statistically, way more people are murdered by an acquaintance than by a stranger, and the lawyer today said that there was no connection to the girls. Now, why are they saying no connection? There may have been a connection. Again, we don't really know. Let's look at some more evidence, though, regarding animal hair, disposable gloves, and items with blood stains from Bryan Kohberger's apartment. This was posted January 18th by Owais Faruqi. Even though a murder weapon remains to be discovered, the cops have found items covered in blood from Kohberger's apartment. Cops searched his Washington apartment shortly after his arrest, December 30th, 2022, for allegedly killing 4 University of Idaho students at the King Road residence. The new report reveals that cops have found possible animal hair strands, disposable gloves, and items with red and brown stains. An item, which is the collection of dark red, has been recovered from the apartment, the New York Times reported, apart from a pillow with reddish-brown stain. Investigators also collected receipts, mattress covers, and the dust container of a vacuum cleaner. Kohberger, 28, is charged with killing 4 University of Idaho students. The 28-year-old was doing PhD in criminology 10 miles away from the murder scene. According to the application for a search warrant, the rental home close to campus where the 4 victims were discovered dead in November had a substantial chunk of the victims' blood on it, including spatter and cast-off blood, which results when blood scatters from a moving object. Okay, if this is all true, he was either framed with all these items in his apartment, but why would this criminology student have all these items in his own apartment? I mean, how dumb is this guy? It's kind of weird. I mean, I gotta say, it's kind of weird. Another article here, Internet wonders if possible animal hair found at BRYAN KOHBERGER home is of Kaylee Gonzalez's dog, Murphy. Among various evidence gathered from the Idaho murder suspect's home was possible animal hair. This sparked speculations that the hair could belong to victim Gonzalez's dog, Murphy. Records of evidence recovered from the suspect's home was unsealed Wednesday, January 18th. Do we know if BK or his family has or had recently lost a pet, specifically a dog? There was a pet hair listed in the recent release. I want to be able to check off the possibility of it being a family pet instead of Murphy. Of course, I want it to be Murphy's. He would be such an important part of convicting BK. Anyway, though, he will always be the best boy. I hope he's also recovering. People forget that animals feel loss and grief as well, a user wrote on Reddit. A follow-up post here. Those who are saying Murphy can't shed because he's a doodle, he definitely can. I've met multiple full-breed doodles that shed. Obviously not like a husky, but it's possible for one little hair to end up in BK's place, the user added. Second edit. After reading the comments and more deliberation, I figure there's 3 ways this hair strand could take us. 1, it's Murphy. 2, it's the dog that was skinned. Talk about a crazy plot twist. Or 3, it's not related to either of those poor babies, therefore probably not important. Okay, and that's another interesting point about all of the animal killings in the area and the skinned dog as well. I talked about it on the previous episodes. If Kohberger's this animal lover, then how probable is it that he skinned the dog? Unless, of course, he did have some kind of psychotic break, or he has a split personality or something of that nature, or there's unrelated scumbags going around harming animals, which is possible, of course. Another follow-up here by Samuk Yantha LKM. Forensic analyst says animal hair from BRYAN KOHBERGER's apartment can be a home run for the prosecution. Forensic expert Dr. Michael Baden had weighed in on what could be a game changer for the prosecution. Fox News reported that Dr. Baden hoped that the animal hair found in the apartment matches the dog that was at the scene. He has further gone on to deem that if found, the animal hair may be a home run for the prosecution to convict him. When police had responded to the 911 call, they found Gonzalez's dog in her bedroom. If they found one animal hair, and I've been involved with this in the past, which came from the dog that was at the scene, that's a home run also for the prosecution, Baden said Thursday, January 19th on America Reports. In addition to the dog hair, the warrants had information about other evidence that Baden believes will help put Kohberger behind bars. But hold on a second. If he had just partied at the home, especially if on more than one occasion, I mean, that could theoretically explain the animal hair. I mean, I don't know how that's a home run per se. Another article here by Varnica Srivastava. Idaho murders. Web sleuths say gloves found in BRYAN KOHBERGER's home and near crime scene don't match. Recently, a few internet users have differentiated between the gloves recovered from Kohberger's apartment and the gloves that were found earlier by the detectives outside the victim's house. A Twitter user recently described the glove found outside the victim's home, briefly describing the material and the quality difference to the ones found in BRYAN's home. Do people not realize that the glove found outside the home was a winter glove and the glove found in BRYAN's apartment was a surgical type glove? Right? Why are some saying it's the same? Yeah, just pointing out these are 2 completely different gloves. I am seeing people try to say the one found outside matches the one in the apartment. They want an OJ type moment so badly. Okay then. So let's go down some rabbit holes. So here's a theory why August 21st, internet thinks BRYAN KOHBERGER started planning murders on the day he was pulled over by Aranava Banerjee. As per the search warrant documents used to retrieve evidence from the home and office of the suspect, Kohberger was pulled over twice by cops while driving his white Elantra between August and November 13th. The car remains one of the key pieces of circumstantial evidence against him. Further investigation, including a review of Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Corporal Duke's body cam and reports, showed that on August 21st, 2022, Bryan Kohberger was detained as part of a traffic stop that occurred in Moscow, Idaho by Corporal Duke. At the time, Kohberger was the sole occupant, was driving a white 2015 Hyundai Elantra. The search warrant reads, Kohberger gave the police his cell phone number during the stop. Is that common? Something weird going on, man. There's something weird going on here. Let's look at another theory. Don't think he did it. Cops using Bryan Kohberger as a pawn to catch the Idaho killer, claims bizarre theory by Arnava Banerjee. And some think that's the same going on with Richard Allen in Delphi. But let me go over this article here. The evidence against Kohberger includes a knife sheath with his DNA on it that was recovered from the crime scene. The probable cause affidavit made public January 5th also revealed that Kohberger visited the murder scene at least 12 times before the killings. However, no concrete motive has been established yet. Numerous bizarre theories about the suspect are being discussed online. A recent outlandish theory that's been floating online recently, a Redditor has speculated that cops might be using Kohberger as a pawn to nab the real killer. Maybe police is trying to catch the real killer through BK, like maybe, question mark. Redditor Puzzlehead Milk 221 wrote on a thread that posed the question, anyone else believe he didn't do it? I mean, there's really not much more to this theory than that from this particular thread. However, let's go a little deeper here. Idaho Murders. Internet wonders if Bryan Kohberger was a police informant as he had no social media, by Varnica Srivastava. Recently, a Twitter user pushed a claim that Kohberger was a police informant, suggesting this could explain why the college student had no social media presence at all. While some acquaintances have revealed that Kohberger went out of his way to make friends, others have claimed he struggled to fit in. The Twitter user noted that Kohberger kept a low profile across social media. Bryan Kohberger was a police informant is why he had no social media. So supposedly he did have a lot of social media, but not necessarily connected to his real name. So here's another interesting article. Suspect Bryan Kohberger had access to police body cam footage database as a WSU doctoral student, by Samu Katha LKM. Hearings for Bryan Kohberger are in full swing. What adds to the fact that reports indicate Kohberger may have had access to a crime lab and live stream from security cameras to aid him. It was reported that the doctoral program that Kohberger had been enrolled in at Washington State University has access to a crime lab database of police body cam videos and live streams from security cameras on and off campus. According to WSU's website, they are used to study complex social interactions between patrol officers and civilians and for other appropriate functions as well. It is said that these tools may be used to allow a suspected killer to view crime scene images and potential videos of death. It would also allow suspects to zoom in on faces if it needed to be. However, WSU denied that Kohberger had access to this lab and further stated that he was not part of this program at all. I don't think that any amount of positive research that's come out of this department is worth the risks of letting a wolf in the henhouse, a source told Fox News. They're all obsessed with crime and criminals. You'd have to be in a PhD in criminology, but sometimes that obsession goes to other levels and attracts this kind of madness, the source added. It was also reported that WSU's CSI lab and the Division of Government Studies and Services are located on campus. So even if he wasn't part of the program, could he still have access to this lab? And isn't it purported that he was part of the program? Now, another curiosity here regarding accomplices and otherwise, and we'll get back to the security issue in a moment. University of Idaho will not scale down security and foot patrols despite Kohberger's arrest by Deepak Kumar January 4th. Now, is that all just for public image, or did the police let them know, is there something that does point to an accomplice or accomplices? University of Idaho now says that it does not plan to scale back security. They do not plan on being lenient with patrols and that the personnel increase will remain in place. The outlet reports that Moscow has a sense of relief, with some students starting to feel safe again. The increase in security came as a measure after the murders of Gonzalez, Mogen, Coronado, and Chapin to make the students feel safe. A new campus police outfit was also introduced with more guards to cover more grounds and that too frequently. It is said that the campus is still getting tips about Kohberger after the arrest, and they're sending him over to Moscow PD and the FBI. The news of the campus security being intact comes right after Kohberger waived extradition and will be returning to Moscow, Idaho to face the 4 charges of murder and 1 count of felony burglary. I mean, I don't know. I mean, would that just be protocol no matter what, so it's not necessarily suspicious? So let's go into more curiosities and mind shocks here. 3 people were there. WSU student's mom alleges Kohberger was not alone for Idaho murders by Jasveen Kawar, January 21st. Kohberger, the sole suspect for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, was arrested December 30th at his parents' home in eastern Pennsylvania, more than 2,500 miles away from the town of Moscow. Since then, a lot of details have emerged linking Kohberger to the killings, mostly from a probable cause affidavit that was released January 5th. The affidavit revealed that Kohberger was in the area of the murders at least 12 times before the killings, and that the suspect left behind a knife sheath at the crime scene with his DNA on it. The accused was also seen by one of the survivors, Dylan Mortensen. But in a recent interview, Kim, the mother of 2 WSU students, has come forward with some serious allegations, stating that Kohberger was not alone on the night of the murders, and further alleged that there were 3 people there. That's a very specific number. Not 2, not 4, but 3. In the very early hours of November 13th, Chapin, Kernodle, Mogen, and Gonzalez were stabbed to death in their off-campus rental home on King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Kohberger, a PhD student in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at the neighboring Washington State University, was charged 7 weeks later. He is still the only suspect in the case. In a recent interview with a YouTube channel, Kim, who is reportedly a mother of 2 WSU students, revealed some shocking information about the murders.
Kim. Huh? Hello, Kim. This is Daniel from the Drunk Turkey Show. I know you called a couple times, so I wanted to return.
I did call a couple of times. I just really feel it's important that anybody who's listening who's got kids over there or lives over there to know that don't just think because this guy's behind bars right now that it's all done and it's safe, because it's really not. The case is still ongoing. The investigation is still ongoing, and pretty active. And I have 2 kids over there. It's scary, terrifying, actually. And I get they got to catch the guys, but the lack of transparency is wild. Right. And I have been told not to speak, but you know what? I'm a mom. Put me in jail, whatever. I'm not gonna stop speaking if I don't think my kids are safe. And I honestly do not believe they're safe. And this guy, he's a monster, no doubt. I have no doubt. But there's so many other areas in this case that are just not being told, nor should they have to be. But you have to guarantee, if I call a police officer and ask if my kid is safe and they can't guarantee me that, that's a problem. And that's what's happening. Right. And they're over their heads. 100% Moscow is over their heads. And I'll say that to them. But this guy could get off. His attorney is better than good. If you want an attorney to get you out, she will. And so will their forensic investigator. And I'm not saying he's brilliant. I don't think he is. I think he's a monster. He's an animal. But, and he did know those girls. And we have a substantial and significant, and I say this on the record, and I'm not alleging it. I'm a parent, and I've been dealing with it now for 2 years. I pay $50,000 a year for this stuff. And I'll tell you what, there is a drug problem, a significant drug problem. There's a Greek Road problem. And I've got kids on Greek Road, right? So I'm coming from a place of knowing, and I just want people to just have a conversation with the kids. You are not safe. Just because the guy's behind bars does not make you safe, right?
Here's the thing: it don't matter where you.
I mean, I sent my kids to school with tasers. That's weird.
Yeah. No, I noticed your what state you were calling from, and I know that it was. It looks like it was fairly close to where this could have taken place. You having kids that are currently going near there, that would be scary. I would be scared, and I understand where your fear comes from, and this probable cause. And I've heard this as well about the lawyer that is defending Brian, and her team that has come in already, and I'm assuming based on the fact that because of the nature of the crime, the degree and the penalty that is involved, that the courts only had a few options as far as who can defend him, and that she was well aware of that early on, and that's why she got to work right away. I mean, she stopped the cleaning, she stopped a lot of things, and
she stopped quite a few things. She's already asked for all of their evidence. She wants that. She asked for that today, and then to have the seal of the. I don't know. I kind of do know what is. So this is over a state line, so there's no reason the feds can't get involved now.
Right.
Because it's cross state lines. And right. And I don't think, and I'll honestly be honest, because I don't think it was his knife. I think it was the guy who SWAT killed December 15th night.
Right. There was a incident at WSU involving a guy who was threatening to cause harm, unalive, when we use that term, his roommates. and he had to have been taken out by lethal means by the SWAT team. And you know,
correct.
I'll be honest with you. I went and looking for information on that case, and I found out his name and who he was. And this guy was an older guy. He was in his above, I think it was
38.
Like 30s, yeah, like in the upper 30s.
PTSD, right? Military PTSD.
Right.
He also is in UI Tech. He works for the University of Idaho Tech Department.
Wow. And so
Tech was down that night. So when they're saying they're getting pings or whatever, first of all, he'd been in the house before a plethora of times. He was an invited guest into that home before. And I do know this because, well, obviously I'm here now, and what are they going to do? My daughter, because we knew it. My daughter knew at 10 a.m. It was Parents' Weekend the weekend it occurred.
Right.
And so we went to get my daughter for breakfast, and then and my son to go to breakfast and go to whatever, grocery shopping or whatever before we left. And on the way home, we get this alert. It was like 5 o'clock. We come over to the other side of the mountains. Our kids are about 6 hours away. And so we came home and we get this alert, and I called my daughter and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she's like, oh, I already know, Mom. I knew that this morning, like around 10. I'm like, how did you know? And so anyway, as it all comes out, as I immediately called the FBI and told them every bit of information I had been given from my daughter and her roommate for them. They weren't there, but then we found out somebody was not telling the truth. So we had to call back, and other information has come out because, you know, I spend Christmas, I pressed my kids to the wall for every bit of information they possibly could have, because people didn't have children at Christmas. Like, it's beyond words. It's beyond, I can't, but at any rate. So the kids, but they think the guys behind bars now and they're good. And the fact is, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a huge problem. It's a problem on Greek Row, and it's a problem with Sigma Chi, and there are 10 student deaths at U of I since May.
Oh, wow.
That's an extraordinary amount. I don't know the count, but I will tell you this. Every time when we go to campus, quite a bit, you know, we watch the games or whatever and participate in our kids' lives there. And every time we've been there, there's been a violent event or a gun event or something. There's never been a time we have been on that campus when there hasn't been something that went down. That's unacceptable, in my opinion. Yeah. And it's just because they don't listen and they're ignoring it. And, you know, my son's an athlete. He chose not to go Greek, and he's actually chosen to transfer to ASU to finish out his education, which we're thrilled. My daughter's a senior, though, right? She's about to graduate with Xana's sister. I mean, these kids are connected. They're friends. And I don't know them other than, I wish I never knew their names, actually, to be quite honest. Right. Right? I mean, but it could have been my kid. Yeah. You know, it could have been all of our children. And nobody's paying. People are satisfied with, it's okay because we said it was okay. But guess what? How can you tell me my kid is safe and that it's a targeted event, but you don't know who is the target or why? It's not. One has to make two. When it makes all these other numbers, something's not right. And I'm not Mom. That's just going to be a pain in the rear. Right. It's just, and I don't apologize for that. God gave me these children, and I plan to do my job. It's numbers. It's a numbers game. So these are two small towns that are connected, right? They're not competitive. They don't compete against each other. They're not rivals, I guess is the word I'm looking for. They're not rival state schools, but they're friendly schools. They get along with each other. A lot of the kids that went there went, you know, so, but they're numbers games. Those towns rely on our students' tuition. They do. And it came all the way. And I do think the bottom line was these kids are going to pour out of here if we don't get control over the narrative. Controlling the narrative would have been to be honest, to say, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what happened. We're going to send you guys all home globally. We know how to do this. We just did COVID. We can do this. We can rally. That would have kept your numbers up. Now kids are fleeing, like they're dropping like flies. If I get my daughter out of there, I would have. And I think they should, if they release him, my daughter doesn't have an argument with me anymore. She can pay her own tuition if she wants to stay, but she's coming home. I mean, honestly. So I think, yes, it's a numbers game. It's about money. And I actually think it's really worth a deep dive into Christ Church. Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting and disturbing church. Or Moscow's beautiful. Honestly, we prefer when we go there to stay in Moscow because it's got great restaurants. It's just got a great vibe. And the hotel's so much nicer than in Pullman. Pullman's just kind of like, I don't know, agricultural corn. You know what I mean? Right. But Moscow's got a lot of great stuff. It's a really cool place to stay, and it's only 5 minutes away. Mm-hmm. So we prefer that. But it's a weird. There is a. You just got to do a deep dive into Christ Church, and a really deep dive into that because they control most of the land and the properties. It's just, you have to look at it. I couldn't explain it, and I don't want to disparage other people's faith. You know, we all have our faiths, and say anything that would get anybody in trouble, but it's definitely worth a deep dive. And there's a lot. And so, I mean, honestly, one of the guys who was actually one of the men who actually was a suspect in this, committed murder and got off with probation. and broke his probation 3 different times, right? And then another guy who works at Mad Greek, because he doesn't work at Mad Greek. He goes to Mad Greek, and I don't know his name, but his wife worked at Mad Greek and knew the girls and had lovely things to say about the girls, but he's also on that list. And I'm not.
You're talking about the owner of the restaurant nearby? Who is
not the owner, but perhaps his perhaps related to that person, maybe. And there's another kid who's possibly related to the Attorney General of the state. I mean, it's a very
small town.
This case and Stigma Chi, I will say this, and I'll say it outright into their face. I've already said it to their national committee. They are no innocent in this whole situation. There are things that have gone down. If these kids don't speak up, kids are going to get hurt, and they're afraid. I understand they're afraid. They got themselves in a little jam. That was bigger than they thought. And I said to my daughter, why in the world would these derelicts, because basically that's what I think all of these guys who have been named are, not just, it's because they're creeping on young girls. That's the creepers. That's what they were referred to. That's what they knew. That guy had been in that house a plethora of times. For his Wi-Fi to connect to there is not a big deal because your phone will automatically reconnect if you've been there before.
Right. Well, he would have to be there and have the password prior, right? Now.
Well, smartphones will just, like, if it's a new enough smartphone, like mine will just reconnect wherever I've been.
Right.
I don't even have to hit a button.
They would have had to have connected initially. Like, for instance, if if there was a private password protected, then he would have never connected to it. I have a question. Do your children that attended the school and the schools nearby, I'm not sure if they attended that school or his school?
Well, I do. My son was in classroom 13. He was a TA in classroom 12.
Oh, wow. So
it was really close.
Yeah. Did he know, or did he know of Brian?
No, because Brian was a PhD student. To be a PhD student, so PhD students, somebody called and told me this actually, and that PhD students have to do like a year of TAing and a year on the Pullman Police Department in order to, it's part of the requirements for getting a PhD. Yeah, yes, correct. So no, my son he's only a second year, so he pre-law, so he didn't, but it doesn't matter. I mean, he clearly doesn't care how many kids are present or if they're boy or girl, man, you know what I mean? He doesn't care. He'll just take you out of that. It's his brothers. And I truly believe he wanted to solve the crime himself when he got hired by Pullman Police. I truly believe that. And he took all of these minions with his little survey and he built up all these people he could mold. He had plenty of time to do it if you're malleable, you know.
Right.
And I don't know that that's right. I don't know that that's wrong, but I just know that the evidence, he did not leave that shield on purpose. He didn't.
Yeah, it is a little bit suspicious, especially the location in which it was found. The fact that there was a single piece of DNA.
And that bloodbath, how in that bloodbath do you only have a tiny little fingerprint? The kids don't even believe it. The kids, my son came to me and he said, Mom, the route and the pings, and I didn't even know he was paying attention because it was over break. Well, obviously he was because I was insane, obviously. But he said, it doesn't match up. And he went through it and I'm like, that's just numbers to me, right? That doesn't register. But then as I processed it, it's true. It doesn't add up.
Yeah, we put together the pings on the phone. We put the surveillance video and we mapped it out, and we say the same thing. There's some missing pieces at the very least.
Besides the fact you have no range on either route.
What do you mean by no range?
Like so your phone, like there's parts when you're coming from Moscow to Pullman, either way, that you can't get any service.
Really?
So you wouldn't ping. Yeah, all the time. Yeah. Service is sketchy. That's why the schools have. My son was really excited because in his dorm room freshman year, he had the box was in his room. He goes, "Oh, I get service," but he knew from his sister who lives on Greek Row that was a thing. So I mean, it's like it's out there in the wilderness. It's the agricultural land, right? And it's their own rules, and they follow their own rules, and it's insane. And my daughter, I was shocked that she knew. And they're moving to Troy. This church is now going towards Troy, but you just take a deep dive because they are worth a look. Because I don't know, it's not a church I join personally. I mean, but to each his own. I don't know, but they have a lot of control over the town. Mad Greek has a lot of control that way. A lot of people have a lot of control, and it's a really scary thing because it's going to happen again if they don't get all the way to the bottom of it and solve the problem from the bottom or the top down, whatever. Then it's going to happen again because the killing I don't think was what was supposed to happen. I think more what was supposed to happen was what was happening by the food truck and with what Maddie told Adam.
Gotcha. So you think that there's still something there with what Adam knows?
Oh yeah, it was a trap house.
Really?
And I just learned that verbiage. Yeah, I just learned that verbiage. Yep, this Christmas. For Christmas, I got new verbiage. Plug and trap house, right?
Right.
Not a clue what that stuff means. I mean, I'm 57 years old, right? And no, this guy's not wearing Vans. Frat guys are wearing Vans.
Yeah.
And my daughter knew at 10 a.m.
Yeah. Dang.
And the police were called at noon.
That's insane.
And I'm not. And here's the thing: until somebody tells me otherwise, I got someone's back. I do. And she's a kid, and even kids get the opportunity to misstep and make mistakes and detour and do stupid things, and then they have their life is their legacy, right? These kids' legacies have been cut short. I don't blame their parents for not wanting things out there, and I don't want things out there. They were good kids. They did a good job at school. They did everything they were supposed to do, and people just need to treat them like their own. They are now our country. They are now our children. So treat them like our children. Don't disparage any of them, especially not because we could be wrong. I mean, there could be I don't know, and I'm not going to judge until I know. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know it. Right. And she gets great, in my opinion. They both do. I'm glad they're alive. I hope they're glad they're alive.
So.
And I hope people are kind to them.
From the school, from the students that attended the school and that are nearby,
Mm-hmm.
Do they think that it's Bryan, or that maybe the police got it wrong?
No, they think it's him and they're good to go. They're like feral kittens, right? Have you ever tried to corral them? Right?
I've never.
They're out there playing and having a good. Yeah. Well, don't, because that's what college kids are. I'd rather have 10 2-year-olds than 2 college kids. Right. They just think, it's their world, and and there's a lot of haves and plenties, and it's can't happen to me, even though it just happened to somebody Right. But yeah, they have this. They can distance themselves so easily, and I don't know if that changes when you have children or what, but no, these kids think they're fine, they're safe, they're good to go. A lot of them went back to school with handguns, with concealed weapon licenses.
Oh wow! Yeah,
Mine just went back with tasers.
Yeah, I'm not surprised though. People would go back to protect themselves after a situation like this. A couple more questions. So. Okay. He apparently was pinged going south of Moscow towards Blaine, and then Genesee, and then crossed back over into Washington, and then went up north. In those areas, how is the reception for cell phone service?
There is none. Zero. You have zero reception. For him to be out of range, because I don't know where the gun is. My guess would have been in one of the water towers, because you could see it from anywhere.
Right.
Both campuses have a water tower, but I'm guessing it's probably down more towards Johnson in the cabins down there, and I think probably one of his little minions has a cabin down there.
Mm-hmm. Got you.
And I have reported that, and they have looked. I don't know if they found the weapon or not, but I don't even think it's his anyway. Yeah. Honestly, yeah. I think it's the guy who was killed by SWAT. So
right,
but there's no range. Range there is terrible.
Yeah, because I mean they try to utilize these pings going south, and I'm wondering if is it possible that he headed south of Pullman, and he was last seen in Pullman around 247. Once you head south of Pullman, how far do you go before you lose service?
Oh, maybe 5 minutes. I'm honestly, because it's all, maybe 5 minutes. There's no cell phone towers. So when you get to, when you come off of I-90, so for me, coming from the Seattle area, coming off I-90, right? I'll have range from Seattle to Snoqualmie Pass. And then I won't have it again until I hit Ellensburg, and I'll have it from Ellensburg until I turn right towards Othello, and then you don't have it all. Basically, you can't get the radio at all. And I went to college in Ellensburg, so you could never get the radio in Ellensburg. So that's kind of if you're basing it on that. So if you go to so you have but they use their iPhone whatever music stuff. But then we drive down, and you don't get it back until after you leave Colfax, which then is another. Oh, you probably have range. It's a 6-hour drive. You have range for maybe 2 hours. Max.
Wow.
So then if you're going to go south, and I think that Johnson, so from what I can tell, they went from Pullman towards Lewiston. You don't have range at all. Towards Spokane, you don't have range at all. I mean, a little bit, but not much. But if you're going deep towards Johnson, there's no range. There's no towers even to even get range. And so you go into data, which most people, so the kids go into data. So my phone will work on data and my kids will. But if you don't think to turn it on to data, right? How can you and I don't even know that there weren't 2 cars, because why did they change the year of the car? Because the year of the car that this guy was driving was in 2015.
Yeah.
There's 2 guys sitting in jail right now who stole a car in the Nampa area, Garden City area, which is a great part of Idaho. But I don't know what jail it would be or what county it is. And the only reason I know about the area is because my son plays basketball, and during COVID, Idaho is its own country. Let me just share that with you. They could play ball, right? We were supposed to go to Texas. We were supposed to go to LA. all the time we were canceled. We could always find a game in Moscow. We could always find a game in Idaho. So that's why I know that part of it, but I also know there's no range.
Right.
And so 2 kids. So did they? They were. I thought they were taken into custody somewhere around the 28th, and they were arrested on the 30th. But I don't know if that's still there, because all of a sudden stuff comes down. Like when that SWAT guy. So I got an alert on the 15th of December. This guy apparently on the 14th had gone into his student housing. Why a 38-year-old man is living with 2 students in kook housing with PTSD and works at U of I tech department is beyond me. I don't even understand that. I don't know who the students are or what the situation was, but it's kook housing, which is Washington State, what they call their housing department. So he was there and he held them at gunpoint and tried to kill them. He let them go. They cleared my so my son's dorm. They lived on the south side. Cleared the south side, evacuated south side during finals week, and then wound up shooting him at whatever time it was. But we didn't get the alert until 3 o'clock. He started this at 8 o'clock on the 14th, and he died at 4 o'clock on the 15th. And we didn't get the alert until like 3:30 in the morning. And we got 3 other alerts after that the following 3 days, which had no follow-ups. And so then at one point, somebody had released, well, actually, I'm not sure if somebody had released it, to be honest with you, or if I had called somebody who was there that I knew was in media, and I said, what's going on, to go there, because there were kids in my son's building that he knew. And she told me that who he was. And then the next day, the story totally changed. Everything, his name, everything. But he, and so when I spoke with him, and I have been spoken, the FBI has continued to contact us and asked us for my kids for more statements. I said to the last officer, I think I was a little fresh, I feel bad, but I said, you're not giving me anything and you're telling everybody they're safe? No way. I'm not giving you another thing until you tell me my kids are safe. Until you tell me what is going on. And I don't, maybe that's unreasonable. And I don't need to know what's happening. I just need to know that it's covered. And I just think it's not. I think with everything in me that these kids are unsafe and somebody's going to get harmed again. Right. There's a lot of dead children. And it is about drugs. And I don't know where it's coming from. But that was a trap house and they were buying drugs. He was meth and Molly. And that's where it started.
Yeah, no, yeah. Everything that you're saying makes a lot of sense.
But you're a very good interviewer because you just got that completely out of me on the radio, right? Or on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Dude. Okay, well, I stand behind everything I say. And I will stand up in front of somebody. And I've told them that. Keep my kids safe. She had brain surgery her senior year. She just wants a senior year somewhere. She's fine. Totally fine. She's finer than she should be. But, we all have a story, right? We all have kids. And kids are out there without, and it's, I don't know I don't even know. My fear is they're going to let them go because they don't have enough to keep them, or at least postpone.
Yeah. There's definitely some holes in this case now. I'm hoping that the search warrant and the search of the Elantra comes up with something that's more concrete, because to hear this, I knew that this was a rural area. I knew that triangulation of cell tower pins were going to be not the most reliable. There's there's a statement in the probable cause affidavit that states that on the 14th that he triggered or connected to a tower in Moscow, but they don't believe that he was there during that day. And so that kind of puts into question the reliability of all of the pings that are out there. And you look at the direction of travel that he was traveling from the east to the west, yet Pullman's from west and he would have been traveling east. That doesn't make sense. You also look at the time frame from, he was at his house at 2:42, but 2 minutes later he was 2 miles away on video. Unless he was traveling 60 miles an hour through Pullman.
That is exactly what my son said. And Pullman's a walking campus. Both of them are, right? The kids normally walk, right? I think they call them freshman cabs because all they do is walk, right? And build up. So my son said exactly what you just said. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that didn't make sense unless there was a second vehicle that was out there without a front license plate that matched the description. And as far as when they came up with the vehicle being newer, they probably didn't figure that out until they came up with a suspect, because had they known about that or that possibility prior to coming up with a suspect, that would have been broadcasted to be on the lookout for. And since it wasn't, that tells me that it wasn't found until after they discovered that this guy was a suspect.
Correct. And when I spoke and so they kept announcing, which really infuriated me, that they knew who he was within 2 weeks. And so when I spoke with the Pullman Police Department and I said they knew who he was the next day, and you let him back on campus, walking around, going to Starbucks with my kids. Like, really? You really? Really? So they knew the next day.
I wonder what evidence they had at that point that led to that direction. That is
because they all knew who he was.
Really?
Yes, they all knew who he was. The kids all know him.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I think some kids got scared. I think some kids are well connected, and their parents spoke for them, and they were waiting for they wanted the kids. The unfortunateness about this situation is it happened at Thanksgiving to Christmas, which I believe is well planned on his part.
Right.
He knew what he was doing, right? Absolutely knew what he was doing. So, and I couldn't pull my kid off that campus. She loves college. Like, she loves it, which more power to her. I'm glad she does. I want you to love this experience. But God, right? You were in harm's way, but he knew what he was doing with his timing. This was planned. He should have started on Monday at the Pullman Police Department, and he was going to solve this crime and be the hero. He knew that guy. I truly believe, because his car was right outside of the coffee apartment house, that he was going to, he knew it was his knife. He touched the knife. He will say, I don't know anything for certain, but I believe that he will say, of course I did. He was my friend. He showed me the knife. It was cool.
Right.
I looked at it. I touched it. There you go. There's that alibi.
So,
right.
Right. Yeah. The touch DNA thing, all he has to do is, handle that sheath at one point. The fact that he was in criminology may have been a reason to handle a weapon of that kind, maybe demonstrate something. I'm not sure. But yeah, those are all plausible explanations. But if they knew who he was the next day, it leads me to believe that there's something that pointed in that direction very quickly. Now,
so, and I'm going to just say this quiet. So, I feel like I should tell you this privately, not publicly.
Okay.
I don't know if that's possible, because I just don't want to announce it, because you know what? These parents have lost children, and I don't care what my kid does in life. If they don't get to change the trajectory of their life through their journey and their path, then it's a terrible, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense at all?
No, I completely understand what you're saying. And yeah, we're actually probably only going to be on here for another few minutes, and then afterwards I can probably give you a ring
tap back. Yeah, perfect. And I'll tell you what I know.
Yeah.
And share what I know, and then let you. I don't want it to go away. I don't want this guy to get away, and I don't want his little minions to get away, and I want everybody involved to have, I never ever want to hear about this happening again. So, yeah. So tap back when you're done, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, no, we appreciate it.
Cool.
Thank you so much, and I'll be giving you a call here in a little bit. So, we had a call come in the other day. We released that call. And a lot of questions and concerns have come out of it. Now, the person that called us in stated that she was, had a daughter and a son that attended WSU, and that they had friends and a roommate that were close to the situation. Now, all we released yesterday was the phone call that came in. There was certain validation that needed to be done in order for us to, one, to even put that video out, and two, to make a second video out. And we were able to do so. I also want to comment on the fact that I did speed up her audio. I sped up everybody's audio, or the entire call, just so that it was a little bit quicker. I apologize if it was too fast. She wasn't on anything. I saw the comments. It was sped up. I did put in the comment section, and I'll put it in again, the timestamp and the show that was the original call was on. But she called us. Her name was Kim, and she had called a couple of times, so I called her back. She was from Washington State, and her last name looked familiar, as far as I believe I had seen it come up in this case before. So that was the main reason why I wanted to call her back. I noticed the proximity of where she was calling from, and then the last name. Now, what she had told me was that she had two students, or children, that were students at WSU. One was in law, one was taking a different major, and that the daughter, one was a son, one was a daughter. The daughter had a roommate whose boyfriend is I don't want to say star athlete, but he is an athlete within one of the programs at the University of Idaho. I'm not going to put any names or anything like that because of the fact that some of these people still attend this school, and I don't want anybody going and attacking them for whatever it is that comes forward. And so what I was able to do and find was I was able to locate that athlete's social media page, trace who his girlfriend was, and trace who her friends were, and it all came back, it all aligned. They are roommates, the girlfriend and the boyfriend, and everything checked out on that aspect. And so on the weekend of November 13th, this is the weekend of the incident, Kim and her husband were out in Pullman, Washington, because it was WSU's parent weekend, right? And so they were actually there at the in the city there. The following day, on the 13th, they end up getting a notice of stay in shelter around 5 p.m. Kim stated she called her daughter, and her daughter told her that she was aware of the situation and that she had gotten information about the situation as early as 10 a.m. that morning. That is approximately 2 hours prior to the 911 phone call that had gone out. What she had stated was that her daughter lived or is part of Greek Row, and that her roommate, because of her association with her boyfriend, who is an athlete at the University of Idaho, was familiar with not just Greek and Greek Row in Moscow, Idaho, but with the victims of the house. She also stated that this guy was associated and at least an acquaintance of Jack and Adam. And so that's how close this conversation was. And so apparently at about 10 a.m., they got word of a quadruple homicide that occurred at that residence. Now, this is a small town. This is rural Idaho. It's not Baltimore, where there's a lot of people around and a bunch of, the community is large. This is a small community. I can almost assure you, because we come from a community probably roughly the same size. News travels fast, and sometimes faster than what comes to the police. Now, definitely. Steve Goncalves and their family had a report, or not a report. They came out on a podcast here recently. Can't remember. It's Olivia. I apologize, Olivia. Where they told them that residents of the city of, or students of Moscow or University of Idaho had contacted them to let them know that there was a situation well before the police did, and that they were aware and calling in and etc. So apparently in the wee early morning hours of November 13th, according to Kim, calls started going out from the surviving roommates to Pi Beta Phi. Sorry if I broke that up.
Close enough.
Yeah. And I apologize. We didn't attend any universities too. This Greek stuff's a little bit new to me. So Pi Beta Phi, who was, I believe, Maddie's and I think one of the roommates' sorority that they were associated with, that they got a call from the house, and those were the individuals that were summoned to the home for somebody that was unconscious on the second floor. According to Kim, this was a house that was known as a drug house, a place where you can go pick up drugs, specifically Molly, and that this was common knowledge. This wasn't something that was found out after the fact by her daughter. Her daughter stated that she was aware of that house being a party house, that house being a house where you can score some Molly or whatnot, and a house that was well known. Now, one thing I'll say about this house is that there was a lot of turnover there. There was a lot of students that were moving in and out. Kaylee and Madison, I'm not entirely sure how long they were living in that house, but from my understanding, I think this was their first semester there. I could be wrong, but you can correct me. I know you guys will in the comment section. Correct me if I am. But, there was a lot of turnover. There was a report earlier of a guy who lived in that same house that stated how you can hear things throughout the house. He recently had lived there, and so early on in this investigation, the police came out saying that this was a targeted situation, that they weren't sure if this targeted was the people inside the house or the house itself. And if that house at one point, maybe it's not, again, currently or wasn't currently used as a house where you can score some drugs. At one point, it apparently was. According to Kim and her daughter, the sorority girls got a phone call early in the morning, and that's kind of when the rumors started, because they showed up that there was an incident and that there was a situation there, and that's how it kind of spread out throughout town. Apparently, the roommates had called, and this is speculation on their part as well, to clean up, maybe perhaps take out some of the narcotics that were in the house out before the cops were called. Yeah. Is that what you guys gathered from her?
Yeah. I felt like that's exactly what she was saying. That they went up there they were called to pretty much get rid of all the illegal substances.
Yeah.
That's the theory that that's why they took so long to call for help.
Right. Now, also, everybody, the Kim had reported all this to the FBI. This is not something that is not known to the FBI. She, in fact, told us that there is a Idaho State Police officer assigned to themselves for their accounts and what they had said. And so, according to Pam's daughter and what she gathered from her roommate, who was pretty close to the situation, that both surviving roommates had seen 3 people outside the house at one point, and they described one person as a creepy person, or as a creepy guy. That creepy guy is who ended up making entry into the house. Now, they were only aware of one person being visually seen inside the house, but again, this is speculation. Speculate that there was more than one person that went in. It may have been 2 as one waited outside, which kind of makes a little bit of sense if there was more than one person. Reason being is, if we were to pull up the map here, initially the first time that Bryan is spotted on camera, or allegedly spotted on camera, is at 3:26 a.m. traveling westbound on the 700 block of Indian Hills. This is west of the neighborhood in which the victims had resided in. I was curious as to why he would be going this direction so far out. He was seen going southbound and in and around Pullman around 247. Had he left and gone directly to this house here, or this neighborhood, he should have gotten there probably around 310, 305, somewhere around there. And so there's about a 15, 20-minute window there that's unaccounted for. We questioned as to why he would be in this neighborhood. Perhaps he was picking somebody up that lived in this neighborhood. A lot of you guys in the comment section stated that if you're up here on this part of the street here, you have a pretty good view of the police department, which you do, right up here. Now, maybe perhaps that he came, stopped, wanted to see the activity that was coming out from the police department before he made his way out there. That's quite possible. I just find it odd as far as the time goes, because at 3:26 he's here. At 3:28, 2 minutes later, he's seen traveling across the highway on Steiner towards the residence. And so he went from this address directly, and at 3:29 he's spotted in front of the home. So he went from this address directly to the house out of this neighborhood. Now, does that give you enough time to stop, take a view of the police department, understand what's going on, know what's happening? Now, the other thing that I could possibly think of is maybe perhaps 3 o'clock, 3:30 is shift change. Maybe he's wanting to see if all the police officers are back in, knows he's probably got about a 20-minute window to do something, because that's roughly about the time that that shift change would take. Now, that's if their shift changes like at 4 in the morning, 3:30. Who knows? But he's coming in from this direction versus, Washington coming in from this direction. Perhaps he dropped somebody off. The other thing is he was pinged at 4:48, about 10 minutes south of Moscow. So had he left here at 4:20 as indicated, as he was seen on Wilunta Drive at a high rate of speed, he should have been around here around maybe 4:35. And so there's about a 13-minute window in which he's not seen. Now, perhaps maybe he was dropping somebody back off in this direction. Speculation, that's not what she said. That's just kind of what we were coming up with based on the questions that we had from the probable cause affidavit as far as where this was located.
Yeah.
So she stated that they saw a creepy guy. The creepy guy went in, was in the house. The surviving roommates saw the creepy guy in the house, which all coordinates with the information that came out on the probable cause affidavit. Apparently, they were aware of this during, within a couple of days of this incident occurring. And so this leads me to believe that at least some of this information that they got was accurate. I mean, there's one thing about the probable cause affidavit is it really doesn't go into what Bethany's statements are. All it talks about is Dylan's statement. And the only statement that it says about Bethany is that she was home and that the roommates were home and in their rooms by 4 a.m. That's basically the extent of what she had stated. As far as what they released, I'm sure there's more to it. Mm-hmm. Now, what she had stated was that Dylan had seen 3 people outside from the first floor and that she locked her room. If you remember, the probable cause affidavit had mentioned something about that she originally was in her second bedroom or on the second floor bedroom. We had questioned why the term originally was there. Like I said, some of this could be exaggerated and little bits and pieces misconstrued. I had a conversation with this lady for 2 hours the night of the phone call, and then we had another hour conversation. And basically all we were trying to get is what we know or not know, but what we can figure what was told to her, and not things that puzzle pieces were trying to be put together. And so she stated that when the probable cause affidavit came out and that Dylan was on the second floor, they questioned their daughter, who then called her friend in front of her and asked her about it being different. And they didn't have an explanation for it. They said, that's not the story that we were told. But again, some minor facts can be changed. She didn't say whether or not anybody was awake during the time, but we can, one thing that she did mention, and we'll kind of go into it right now, is that she has a son, WSU, who was, pre-law and was taking law classes. And his classroom is actually right next to the classroom that Brian was a TA at, a teacher's assistant. And so they have a family friend who is in Brian's class. Now, we asked her, it's like, hey, did your son see him? Make any contact with him? And she said, no, not really. He had seen him, but really never made contact with him, didn't talk to him or any of those things, but then stated that her friend, their family friend, who's also a friend of her son's, is somebody that does attend his class. And, she said a lot of the same stuff that she told them, that he, was difficult when it came to grading, kind of a hard ass, so to speak. And then that after the situation, everybody was getting A's, things like that. So it wasn't anything too far different. However, we asked her, is like, hey, did he have any marks on him? Did he have any bruising, scratches, anything that would indicate him that he was possibly involved in an altercation? And she said, no, that they basically, that this girl, this student, stated that there was no sign of anything as far as scratches, marks, bruising, any of those things on him from what they could tell. He also had a physical done a few days after the incident, right? Where he went to a doctor, had had his routine physical. If he was a second person in there, and Dylan did not describe him full of, she said she saw a dark figure with a mask. She didn't say that she saw somebody full of blood or any of those type of things. Is it possible that she saw Bryan, but Bryan perhaps was the second person in there and maybe not the person actually committing the assaults, but was there watching, documenting, doing, trying to understand the commissioning of a crime as from a close point of view? What do you guys think? The caller has no doubt that Bryan was involved. And it kind of answers some questions if somebody else was involved with him, along with him. He made the statement about, did they arrest anybody else? In the recent documents that were released, they were asking about any co-defendants, things of that nature. She did state that there was a change in the story between the roommate of the daughter and the boyfriend. They stated that on the night of the incident, she dropped her daughter off at her off-campus sorority house, and that the roommate wasn't there. The daughter then later told her that the roommate and the roommate's boyfriend were both there, and then that I guess a week later or whatever, the statement changed that the roommate, the boyfriend of the roommate wasn't there, right? And so she dropped him off. She kind of rephrased that again. Mom dropped off daughter at her off-campus house. She knew the roommate. She'd been friends with the roommate. And I'm talking about the mom, and stated that when they go into town, they usually talk to her, whatever. She wasn't, to their knowledge, wasn't there. After the incident, her daughter had told her that both the roommate and the roommate's boyfriend were at her house and they spent the night there. It was later found out afterwards that the boyfriend's roommate wasn't there and he was back in Moscow at the time, possibly with JD. It's possibly that, and that mom, Kim, called the FBI and the police and let them know that, hey, my daughter's story has changed. She said first initially that the roommate and the boyfriend were there, and now she's saying she's not aware if the boyfriend was there. He could be back home. And they felt a little bit, I don't want to say suspicious of the boyfriend, but she didn't feel comfortable that his story had changed, and that he knows apparently the sorority girls that were called to the house that morning, right? And so she called the police with that information, and the police told her that a lot of stories had been changed and that there was a lot of lies that were going on, and that they weren't surprised by that. If this place, and she had accused this place of being a possible place where you could score some narcotics. She mentioned a couple of other places that were both in Washington and in Moscow and Pullman, Washington, that were associated with possible narcotic activity. And so, I thought I should bring that aspect up as well. But for the most part, just to kind of wrap everything up, the information that she was able to obtain was that they saw somebody in the house before anybody else knew that they had saw somebody in the house. She stated that the sorority girls from Pi Beta Phi are the ones who were called that morning to go over. Whatever it is that they were supposed to have gone and cleaned up or done is why they were called. And that her daughter was aware of the situation before the 911 call was called in, possibly because the sorority girls started to send text messages, make phone calls, things of that nature. Rumors starting to spread, which honestly drives more questions for me, that so much of the students and people close to the situation or close to the victims knew about the incident before the 911 call was made. I think that's kind of concerning. She stated that there was multiple people outside of the house before the incident, and that it's possible at least 2 people made entry into that house. She stated that that her son and her son's friend, or their friend, who attend WSU in the law program, one of them was a student under Bryan, and that he didn't have any visible marks shortly after the incident.
As per the video interview, Kim's daughter reportedly told her that by 10 a.m. after the murders, her daughter already knew about the details of the incident. The daughter also told Kim that the girls from the sorority Pi Beta Phi were called. The YouTube channel further reported that more people have come forward and said that starting from 8 a.m. that morning, people were called to the home where the killings took place. So, I don't know what was speculated earlier, that just random people that were walking by saw one of the roommates collapse outside the home and used her phone to call the police. I mean, there's always been some shady issues with how that all went down with the 911 call. Now, if this is all true, and I'm not alleging it is, but if it is, what does that mean? Is there some kind of connection to the frats and sororities? We went over this before in the previous episodes. If Ethan got into a fight with somebody at the sorority, if this individual did happen to be expelled from this, or from the fraternity, for making girls uncomfortable or whatever, does he want vengeance? Does Kohberger know this guy? I mean, this is all quite shocking. So here's another bizarre oddity. Cops responded to horrifying hit and run outside Kohberger's home on the night of the Idaho murders by Arunava Chakrabarti, January 19th. Multiple outlets have reported that authorities responded to a crash in front of the suspect's home, which resulted in 2 pedestrians being sent to a hospital on the night of the Idaho killings. Police were called to report of a crash in front of an apartment complex on the Washington State University campus in Pullman, Washington, around 11:40 p.m., the night of November 12th. The apartment complex, which serves as a residence for mainly graduate or PhD students, had been home to Kohberger since August, when he relocated from his home in the state of Pennsylvania to start a PhD program in criminal justice at the university. Just 3 hours before the suspect left his home for Idaho, police arrived at the bloody scene to find 2 pedestrians, a male WSU student, and a woman with injuries after being struck by a car. The driver was already at large by then. According to insider Turner Gardner, said that a man had been thrown from the road and a woman lay face down screaming. It was horrifying. She said of coming upon the scene just before midnight, November 12th, "I heard a screech and a loud bang." Another witness, Andrea McKinsey, 25, told the outlet it was scary. So coincidentally, there's a hit and run involving 2 individuals on the night of the murder. What is going on here? How often does that happen? As often as SWAT standoffs? Because let's go to this angle, which is just very curious. I've gone over it in the previous episodes as well. Make sure you check them out if you haven't checked them out yet. Who is Brent Kopaka? Internet wonders if BRYAN KOHBERGER knew the Army vet gunned down by SWAT team. By Payush Arora, January 18th. The latest point of contention among these online sleuths seemed to be the possible connection between Kohberger and Brent Kopaka, a U.S. Army vet who was fatally shot by a SWAT officer during a standoff near the Washington University campus. Kohberger, who is currently quartered in the Latah County Jail, was arrested in Pennsylvania for killing Gonzalez, Chapin, Kernodle, and Mojin in their off-campus home November 13, 2022. He was living with his parents, Marianne and Michael Kohberger, in their Poconos house, where the police also found the white Hyundai Elantra, which they had been searching for many weeks. The same vehicle was pulled over by Indiana police December 15th, just 2 weeks before his arrest. Authorities earlier revealed that Kohberger and his father were pulled over twice within a 9-minute time span on I-70 while making a 2,500-mile cross-country trip. The Indiana Police Department also released body cam footage of the said incident. In one of the videos, Kohberger was seen discussing an incident near Washington State University where a SWAT team killed an armed man amid a standoff. Now, that is very curious, because how often are these SWAT shootouts occurring at WSU? Or is this really the only time? Yet another theory here. BRYAN KOHBERGER, framed by security guard from University for Idaho Murders, claims family member in Facebook post by Varnica Srivastava, January 14th. Since the murder, several online sleuths have combed through the victims, suspects, and their families' publicly accessible information, including social media profiles on various websites. Recently, a Twitter user unveiled a chilling post from a Facebook group where a Facebook user claiming to be Kohberger's relative has allegedly tried to prove his innocence and claimed the Idaho murder suspect was framed by his university security guard friend. The Twitter user shared these claims and wrote, "Say what Kohberger family member posting on social." Say what? BRYAN KOHBERGER family member posting on socials. Along with the tweet, the user shared a screenshot of the text that reportedly Kohberger's family member wrote anonymously on Facebook. The screenshot reads, "I'm posting anonymously because BRYAN is my family and you people in this group act like vultures and rabid raccoons. BRYAN is innocent and you will see he has been framed by his drug partner friend, the security guard from the university." Wow. It's a pretty bizarre theory here. They were doing drugs together in the parking lot as they had done numerous times, but when security guard started acting like a peeping Tom outside the girl's window, BRYAN left the security guard and drove back to his apartment. The reason the phone was off is that because the battery was flat and the security guard was using the car charger. BRYAN put his phone on charge when he left the parking lot, and he switched it back on when he was near his apartment because that's how long it took to get the charge going. It's a very specific theory here. BRYAN's knife was in the car and security guard was holding it because he used it to chop the cocaine lines. Yes, I said cocaine because BRYAN stopped heroin years back and substituted the drug with cocaine. He has tried so hard to stop everything, but he's an addict and he has had bad migraines, so the cocaine actually helps him. He had no idea security guard was going to do what he did, and he just wanted to teach the security guard a lesson by leaving him behind. BRYAN actually feels terrible that he left this maniac behind, but it's not his fault. You people need to stop with these singing videos and funny pictures of BRYAN and my dad, or we will sue you for everything you have. All of you just get a life and stop playing Facebook detectives because you are just a bunch of bored losers that have no morals. Okay, very curious post here. So let's get to the most mind-shocking information here, again, regarding this security guard. So on the previous Mind Shock episode, a poster posted this: the guy killed by SWAT worked at Idaho University as an IT tech. Note the computerized camera system on campus went down the night of the murders. So has that been verified that the security system at University of Idaho actually went down during that particular night? In obviously the house not that far from the university. If so, is it also true that this guy, this security guard who happened to be killed in a SWAT shootout, actually worked at the University of Idaho? Is it possible he was the one that shut those cameras down? I mean, this is like a never-ending rabbit hole here with this guy shot by SWAT. Something just feels off about the whole thing. Again, unless it's a common occurrence at Washington State University. If it is, then okay. But if it's not common, it's never happened before. The timing sure is curious, is it not? Does this security guard know something at the least, whether or not he was directly involved? I mean, was he an accomplice of some kind? Now, if it was a friend, security guard, whatever, who he did drugs with, I mean, obviously they would have Kohberger's DNA. They could frame him. Again, we don't necessarily have motives, means, and opportunities. Also, if they had his phone, or some people allege that whenever a phone is cloned, it could still show up as pings because the cloned phone has a cloned SIM card or whatever, so it would bounce and show the same positions as if it were his real phone. Like, I don't know if anybody's answered that. Like, what happens when a phone is cloned? Are there two sets of pings for where the phone really is? Or if the original phone happens to be off and dead, and then it's just the information from the cloned phone, how would that work? I mean, we have a lot of problems here. We have multiple pieces of evidence that point to at least more than one perpetrator. May or may not have included Kohberger. I mean, there's a lot that does not add up here. The final point here, just another weird oddity and coincidence for the stack, is that BRYAN KOHBERGER's sister, Amanda Kohberger, actually starred in a horror movie where a group of students get stabbed. How often, again, for the people that just write this all off as mere coincidence, which it might be, again, this is Mind Shock, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. How often has a serial killer's sibling actually been in a movie where the mimicked the exact crimes? I mean, it's not like she was in a movie with shootouts and people got killed by guns or by other means. I mean, she was specifically in a horror movie, people were stabbed. I mean, Yeah, I mean, although supposedly there were knives and hatchets used in the movie, so not just not just knives, but also hatchets. So, I mean, I don't know, not necessarily exactly. So, Amanda Kohberger appeared as Lori in the movie 2 Days Back in 2011. The story surrounds a group of young students who end up with a maniacal killer they trust during their hike to a remote forest area. I mean, the movie, so it's not exactly the same. Director stated this: I remember her well. I directed the movie, wrote the movie, I cast her. She's a lovely woman who was very nice. I liked her a lot, he said. The movie set its premise around a group of environmentally conscious students who are on a 6-day mission to catch forestry students suspected of illegal foresting in the woods, as per the movie's promotional materials, report the New York Post. So it's not exact, but yeah. Just another weird oddity for the pile. There's actually one more oddity here, which may or may not link to the security guard, if he was also some kind of computer guy, or if there's other people involved here, but this is another article I didn't go over yet. All the way back December 30th, 2022. Also on Mia by Tuhin Chakraborty. Idaho murders Kaylee Gonzalez's LinkedIn account was active 12 hours after the 911 call, says sister. New video circulating on social media platforms appears to show Kaylee Gonzalez's sister Olivia showing a screenshot of Kaylee's LinkedIn profile. The video was posted on several social media platforms, including Reddit, where the voiceover on the video reportedly said that the screenshot revealed that Kaylee's account was online 11:33 a.m. November 13th, which was 12 hours after the initial 911 call was made. The video also revealed that the account was shortly deactivated after this. Kaylee's LinkedIn account now supposedly shows a message, "The content is unwanted or harmful," as the reason for deactivation. The voiceover on the video also claimed that Olivier showed one email where she messaged the Moscow PD to ask why they deleted Kaylee's LinkedIn, to which the police department reportedly replied, it was illegal for them to do that and it was not them. The video then ends with a question asking who logged into Kaylee's LinkedIn and why only her LinkedIn profile was deactivated while all her other social media accounts are still active. Several netizens pitched in and expressed their thoughts on the new information. As one person wrote on Reddit, probably LinkedIn. Social media companies often deactivate accounts of high-profile suspects or victims in cases. Another argued, saying this happened 12 hours after the murder. The names had not been released at that point. LinkedIn wouldn't have deactivated this account, certainly not at that point. Someone noted a hollowed out green circle indicates that someone is not actively using LinkedIn but has push notifications enabled on mobile. The same day, though, there wouldn't have been an obituary or anything to verify a death. Yet another user remarked, yeah, that's kind of weird. Regarding Madison Mojin, another Redditor said, I just checked, hers is still active. Super depressing, though. She's so well-spoken, seems pretty driven. No doubt she had a bright future ahead of her. Rest in peace, angels. I don't know exactly what triggers LinkedIn specifically to deactivate an account, but maybe, just an example, there were some very disturbing troll comments on Kaylee's account, but not on Maddie's, or some friend of Kaylee or the police contacted LinkedIn and requested it was deactivated. I'm open to other ideas, including someone else accessing Kaylee's account. A lot of things seem possible at this point. Another user added, I wish I had other theories, but yeah, I mean, of what you said sounds a million times more legit than killer deactivated it, yet another user remarked. Yeah, this is really weird. Yeah, I mean, is it possible she was logged in, didn't log out, but doesn't that I mean, I guess if you change your settings, would it continue to have you logged in? Is it possible to be logged in permanently? And then some kind of battery went dead and it logged out? That's the only thing I can think of, unless this is some kind of a weird... Well, I mean, that would only explain the being logged in. That wouldn't explain why the account was terminated before the names were made public. So, yeah, there's a lot of curiosities, oddities in this case. Plenty more to come. I mean, there's so many more questions here regarding Kohberger, motives, motivations, the timeline, whether or not other parties were involved. But yeah, this whole SWAT shootout thing, I keep coming back to that. That's weird. And then there seems to be a lot of weirdness at the frat and sororities again as well. I mean, just coincidentally, out of 10 sororities, the only 2 that are on probation are the ones that the victims belong to. I mean, that's a little weird. I mean, you could think one of the victims might have belonged to one of the ones that weren't on probation, but nope. The only 2, 20% chance for 3 individuals to all belong to that 20%. I mean, we're talking exponential odds here. This is, I mean, not, this isn't a lottery win, but it's definitely a little weird. Definitely a little weird. Coming right over a lot of Halloween weirdness. I mean, reports of some random guy in people's homes. Lot of bizarreness going on in this case. Obviously, the coverage will continue. Hope everybody found another edition of MindShock True Crime interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like and share, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.